Well, El Segundo, we're going to call this meeting to order. Madam Clerk, would you please take roll call?
Absolutely. Councilmember Baldino.
Here.
Councilmember Giroux.
Here.
Councilmember Perstuck. Here. Mayor Pro Tem Pimentel.
Here.
And Mayor Boyles.
Here. Thank you, Madam Clerk. All right, we're going to have the Pledge of Allegiance led by Councilmember Baldino, but first we'll have the invocation led by Father Alexei Smith of St. Andrew's Russian Greek Catholic Church. Father Alexei, please stand.
Let us pray. O God of hope, these crisp fall days remind us that all we have is a gift from you. Help us to use wisely the gift of our city. While our world is at unrest, ruptured by violence and lack of respect for the dignity of each and every human being, and our nation is marred by political distrust and lack of civility, you still shower us with gifts to seek, to discover, to guide, and to learn. Open our hearts to recognize your presence in our midst this evening. Grant the members of our City Council and all who provide them with input the strength and the wisdom to overcome fear that limits the action of your Spirit. May your Spirit impel them and all of us to act justly in the pursuit of the betterment of both our residential and commercial sectors. O good and gracious God, who loves and delights in all people, we stand before you, knowing that the spark of life within each person is the spark of your divine life. Pour out on us, O God, we pray, a spirit of truth, understanding, and peace, that we may know with all our hearts what is pleasing to you, and with one accord pursue what we have come to know. Amen.
Thank you, Father Alexei. It's always great to see you. Really appreciate that. And thank you, Councilmember Baldino. All right, we've got a couple special presentations. First up is Jose Calderon, our Director of IT, with our new El Segundo Connect app. Mr. Calderon.
Good evening, council members. Very excited to be here today to announce the launch of El Segundo Connect, the city's online digital platform for reporting non-emergency events such as graffiti, potholes, and air quality concerns. El Segundo Connect is available on your desktop computer as well as your iPhone and Android device. So I'd like to show you briefly the website. So this is El Segundo Connect. You can reach it by, by browsing to elsegundo.org/connect. There's also a link on the city's webpage where you can browse to this website. And here you can see we can do a request for service. There's a knowledge base and notices, as well as a link to our already existing permitting system. We're not going to click into this now. We're trying to be brief, but I'd like to show you the iPhone app. This is the iPhone app. It's available to the public, so we encourage everyone with an iPhone or Android device. Simply search for El Segundo Connect from the Google Play or iOS store, and you'll be able to connect with us through this app. You can see here there's several functions outside of just requesting service. You can view city calendar. You can pull up the permitting system. You can even view the recreation guide. So a lot of functionality baked into the iOS and Android app. We also have a promo video that we'd like to share, a short video, and there we go.
Welcome to El Segundo Connect, the city's easy-to-use platform for reporting non-emergency issues like potholes, air quality concerns, or graffiti with just a few clicks. And it's available 24/7 from your computer or phone. See something that needs attention? Open the El Segundo Connect website or download the app. Click on Request for Service, select the type of issue, add a comment or details, attach any supporting pictures or documents, provide a location, add your name and email, and click Create Request. It's that simple. After you submit your request, the city team jumps into action to take care of it. Creating an account allows you to keep track of your submissions and get updates on the status of your request. You can even see service requests submitted by others to know what is happening in your area. El Segundo Connect also provides instant access to a variety of city web pages, including the latest news, calendar of events, and job opportunities. keeping you informed and engaged with everything happening in El Segundo. Whether you're at home or on the go, El Segundo Connect is designed with your convenience in mind. Visit elsegundo.org/connect or download the El Segundo Connect app today and put the power of our city in your hands.
So again, the website and the app are available today, and hoping everybody downloads it or visits us when they need to connect with us. Any questions?
Thank you so much, Jose, for doing this. I think this is replacement of the existing button that we used to have on our, and that button has been removed, correct, from our website?
Correct. That
Okay.
has been updated, yes.
And now we have trackability. And then when we do the strategic planning, we'll start developing KPIs around it. Is that the plan?
Yes, the city manager's office has a set of reports that they've started to carve out already, and that they're, I believe, anticipating presenting to you during those sessions,
Perfect.
based
Thank
off the
you.
data that we gather from El Segundo Connect.
And then does it have the map that Mr.
It
Pimentel wants?
absolutely does have a map.
Okay.
We plan on releasing that after about 3 months, once we have enough data to present metrics. So right
Lovely.
now it's hidden, but we will be revealing that in 3 months.
Great.
Jose, it's probably a question for the chief, but one of the things in the patches meetings, which I know we're going to talk about later, we talk about is what should we do if we see a homeless person, someone that appears to be homeless that we're concerned about, and his answer up until now has been call 911. Don't worry about it. Let us triage it, but call 911. With this app, would that be an appropriate use of reporting someone that you're concerned about, or should we still continue with 911, or does that kind of depend on the severity of the situation at the time? Just want to be clear about, what we tell people about the app. And the
So I'll let
purpose.
Chief speak to a little more. Maybe, I think there's a patches update happening later today, but while we did build this app, we did engage with each director, and the patches program was a topic of conversation while this was being built. There is a homelessness category that you can select from El Segundo Connect. So those are reports that we can gather from the public and complement the patches program.
Got it. So if you're concerned, then still go to 911 if you're concerned about somebody's, yeah, okay. But otherwise, if you just notice a new homeless person walking down the street like I did yesterday, you would use this app, Chief?
Yes, and it will be discussed pretty considerably right now when the patches update comes. Definitely be discussed.
Thank you, thank you. Anything else for Mr. Calderon? Good stuff.
No, I already downloaded the app. It's got a really great interface, so nice work.
Great, thank you. Thank you to Robert Settle, Diane Chaban, and Jerson Gomez for getting this going. Thank you all. Appreciate the help.
Thank you, team effort. Awesome. Really appreciate it. That's great. So that other thing reported or whatever on the website was pretty clunky. Yeah, I'm glad that's gone. It's good.
Taking that report it button away.
That's great. All right.
And Mayor, if I can just
Yeah.
add, a great thanks does go to Jose and the IT team for finally putting this together. Very exciting. Now the key thing is to get residents to sign up to participate, because you have to sign up to be able to utilize this. So our next piece will be a kind of an outreach marketing campaign to inform folks that this is available now as a community resource. So.
On the desktop version for laptops, people can't report it as a guest. They have to have an account to do it. So if someone wants to report a hole in the fence at the dog park, do they have to have an account with El Segundo to do it, or can they report it as a guest?
So we had discussions about how to handle that, and we felt it was important to have the two-way communication, which is a feature of El Segundo Connect. Not only can residents reach out to us and communicate with us, but we can also message them back through the platform. So we felt it was important to require them at a minimum to provide their email address and their first and last name.
I think that is going to greatly reduce the number, the usage on that, especially when it comes to code enforcement sort of items. People are not going to be comfortable putting their email on there if they're complaining about their neighbor's fence.
And that's something we can certainly take a look at and loosen the restrictions if needed down the road.
Yeah, the report it function, you had a choice.
Mhm.
You can either put your information on and we'll get back to you, or just do it anonymously. So I agree with Mr. Pimentel that you will get more activity if people can just report something without having to quote unquote get too involved, if that makes sense.
And then could we not pre-populate all the email and names of the people that have already signed up for our newsletter, through our outreach? Because a lot of people have already given us that information.
That would be something perhaps targeted through a newsletter or a mailing, but
Yeah.
they would still need to download the app or visit the website. So That's something that probably more from a
We just
awareness
wanted,
standpoint.
we just wanted to make it as simple as people for as simple as possible for people to let us know about information. And I think to Chris's point, people may not elect to notify it if they have to provide.
We can
that
certainly loosen those restrictions at any time.
All right, thank you very much. Good stuff. All right, next up we have Councilmember Baldino is going to read the Childhood Cancer Awareness Week proclamation.
All right, this is our proclamation from the City of El Segundo. Whereas the American Cancer Fund for Children and Kids Cancer Connection report cancer is the leading cause of death by disease among U.S. children between infancy and age 15. This tragic disease is detected in more than 16,000 of our country's young people every year. And whereas 1 in 5 of our nation's children loses his or her battle with cancer, many infants, children, and teens will suffer from the long-term effects of comprehensive treatment, including secondary cancers. An estimated 400,000 children and adolescents are diagnosed globally with cancer each year. And whereas, founded over 30 years ago by Stephen Firestein, a member of the philanthropic branch of the Max Factor Cosmetics family, the American Cancer Fund for Children, Inc., Kids Cancer Connection, Inc., and Lions Club International are dedicated to helping these children and their families. And whereas the American Cancer Fund for Children and Kids Cancer Connection provide a variety of vital patient psychosocial services to children undergoing cancer treatment at Children's Hospital Los Angeles, City of Hope National Medical Center, UCLA Mattel's Children's Hospital, Los Angeles General Medical Center, Harbor UCLA Medical Center, Miller Women's and Children's Hospital, Long Beach, Cedars-Sinai Medical Center, as well as hospitals throughout the country, thereby enhancing the quality of life for these children and their families. And whereas the American Cancer Fund for Children and Kid Cancer Connection also sponsor toy distributions, home and hospital instruction, family sailing, art therapy, pet-assisted therapy, KCC family housing, Logerton Noon, Laughter is Healing, It's Magic, Nothing is Impossible, KCC Supercar Experience, and other hospital celebrations in honor of a child's determination and bravery to fight the battle against childhood cancer. Now, therefore, on this 15th day of October 2024, the Mayor and members of City Council of the City of El Segundo, California, hereby proclaim November 3rd through November 9th, 2024 as Childhood Cancer Awareness Week in El Segundo, and encourage the citizens of El Segundo, businesses, nonprofit organizations to observe Childhood Cancer Awareness Week and support this cause that so deeply impacts families in every community. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There's no one here to accept, but thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Baldino. All right, next up we have National Bullying Prevention Month. Councilmember Perstuck.
So we have a proclamation from the City of El Segundo, whereas bullying is the aggressive use of power targeting another person or group of people with repeated unwanted words of action, hurting them emotionally and physically. And whereas bullying occurs in neighborhoods, playgrounds, schools, and online through technology, and whereas various researchers have concluded that bullying is the most common form of violence, affecting millions of American children and adolescents annually, and whereas thousands of children and adolescents are affected by bullying annually in our community, and whereas targets of bullying are at an increased risk of depression, anxiety, sleep difficulties, lower academic achievement, and dropping out of school. And students who are repeatedly bullied often fear such activity as riding the bus, going to school, interacting online, and attending community-based activities. And whereas children who bully are at greater risk of engaging in more serious violent behaviors. And whereas children who witness bullying often feels less safe, helpless to stop it, and intimidated. Now, therefore, the Mayor and members of the City Council of the City of El Segundo, California, hereby proclaim the month of October 2024 National Bullying Prevention Month, and encourage schools, students, parents, recreation programs, religious institutions, businesses, and community organizations to be encouraged to engage in a variety of awareness and prevention activities designed to make our communities safer for all children and adolescents. And once again, there is no person to present this National Anti-Bullying Prevention Proclamation, but I hope this children feel safe in our town.
All right, thank you very much, Councilmember Perstuck. All right, that concludes special presentations. Now is the time and place for public communications. Madam Clerk, we have someone that would like to speak, right?
I do. Kathy Adkins.
Hi, I'm Kathy Adkins, and I wanted to let you know I feel very privileged to live in this community. And I know there's a lot of people to thank, our police, our fire, you guys. Oh, not loud enough, huh? That's unusual. But one of the unsung heroes, I think, is our local newspaper. It's one of the few newspapers that I'm aware of that is fair. And I just felt so pleased with the information that Brian Simon had published for the people that are running for your seats. Gave me an opportunity to judge and hopefully make an intelligent decision. And that Heidi, the owner, runs such a good newspaper. And I think it would be nice if somehow we as a city could let them know how much we appreciate all of their work. It's part of what keeps us a good community, because we get to know what's going on. And I would recommend, sir, that you take out an ad in the paper to let people know about El Segundo Connect. Because that paper is in everybody's hands, and what a great way to do it. You might even get front page. Anyway, I had called to thank them, and I thought I owed them more than that, so I wanted to do it publicly. So thank you for the time, and if you can get them a plaque or whatever, I think it would be wonderful. Thank you for the time.
Thank you, Ms. Atkins. Really appreciate that.
That's all I have.
That's it for public communications. Okay. Well, I think Ms. Atkins, I'm pretty sure Mr. George will follow up on that, right? They have been here a long time, and I know
Yes.
they've had their challenges here and there. And I remember my predecessor, Mayor Fuentes, when the Herald was experiencing some challenges with advertisement revenue. They were considering, calling it quits. And I remember her being very passionate about how great it is to have local newspaper representation. So anything we can do to help them would be great.
Will do, yep.
Okay, let's see. We're going to move on to city manager follow-up. Any comments based on that, or?
No, other than I'll take your advice on getting some, helping get the El Segundo Connect word out through that newspaper. Thank you for that.
All right, thank you, sir.
Can I add to that? That is actually an interesting idea a bit, because we have so many residents who do not access the items we put online. And we could clearly see we all received a comment about construction at the Plunge with someone who probably had thrown away the flyers with their junk mail, certainly isn't accessing the things online. So if we have big updates and things, there's certainly space to be had in the paper besides our DBA announcements, which take up 2/3 of it.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, procedural motions. Item A, read all ordinances and resolutions on the agenda by title only. Would someone like to move approval?
So moved.
Great. Drew on the first.
Persick, second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, 5-0. Any polls for consent? Okay, do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Great. Second?
Baldino seconds.
All righty, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 5-0. Okay, public hearing. This is a time and place hereto fixed for a public hearing regarding the introduction of an ordinance to amend the El Segundo South Campus specific plan to change the land use designation of Lot 14 within Phase 2 of the El Segundo South Campus specific plan area, and resolution approving addendum number 2 to the final environmental impact report. City Clerk, was proper notice given of the hearing in a timely manner?
Yes, it was.
Has any written communication been received regarding this public hearing? Great, thank you. Public hearing is now open. Mr. George, who will make the presentation?
Yes, our Community Development Director, Michael Allen, will
Mr.
do that
Allen,
report. Michael, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, members of City Council. We're going to get the PowerPoint up, and then our planning technician, Jasmine, is going to lead us off with the presentation. And Eduardo's here somewhere, so if there are any questions, Jasmine or Eduardo and I will also be available for questions.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. My name is Jasmine. I'll be presenting Environmental Assessment 1360. and specific plan amendment SPA 24-01. The, doesn't go. Oh, there we go. Thank you. The job site is located at the southeast corner of East El Segundo Boulevard in Nash Street. It is Lot 14. It is identified under Phase 2 of the El Segundo South Campus Specific Plan. It currently is vacant. The project actually, Michael, thank you. The project does not propose any new development as part of this request, and the proposed land use change would expand the permitted uses for Lot 14 to include data centers, general storage and warehousing, high and medium bay labs, light industrial uses, parking structures, and surface parking lots. The proposed specific plan amendments include removing Lot 14 from the CMU list and adding it to the OIMU list. The second specific plan amendment includes changing the land use designation color on the label for Lot 14 from commercial office mixed use to office industrial mixed use as well, which is the circled one right there. And lastly, the applicant is proposing to add additional footnote language for permitted uses for data centers, parking structures, and surface parking lots in Lot 14, which is highlighted in yellow. We also highlighted the uses that will be additionally allowed in Lot 14, which are highlighted in blue. And we wanted to highlight that what's highlighted in pink and purple are currently uses that are not permitted and will continue to not be permitted. Those uses include freight forwarding and mini storage. We also wanted to let you know that we've added the definition or reference that the, it's, if you could go back, the use that we are going to additionally allow is the warehouse and, oh, if you could, back. Yeah, right there. So for general storage and warehousing, we added a footnote specifically identifying its definition, which we do have it part of the slide if you do want to reference it, which basically identifies that freight forwarding and mini storage is prohibited. So we wanted to add that clarification for the permitted uses. On September 12th, the Planning Commission held a public hearing, and after a brief discussion, it was determined that the proposed amendments will not interfere with the adjacent fully developed lots, but would rather help achieve the primary El Segundo South Campus Specific Plan goal to facilitate and revitalize the city east of Pacific Coast Highway through its tailored development standards for Lot 14, which is the one that we're amending today. The Planning Commission adopted Resolution Number 2956 and Resolution 2957, recommending City Council approve Addendum Number 2 and approve the proposed specific plan amendments. The El Segundo South Campus Specific Plan originally adopted was found to be persistent and consistent with the general plan, and proposed the amendments are consistent with the specific plan vision, goals, and objectives. Specifically, the proposed amendments are consistent with the general plan economic development objective ED 1-2, policy ED 1-2.2, as it seeks to maintain and promote land use that improves the city's tax base, balancing economic development and quality life goals. An increased economic base will provide the city with resources that the general plan use element, policy objective LU 516, to do, which is to attract the kinds of industrial uses which will be economically beneficial to the community, as well to enhance the environment quality of the city. The proposed modifications will help achieve the primary goal of the specific plan, which is to revitalize the city east of Pacific Coast Highway, to ease pedestrian access by implementing a site plan review and AUP process. The city will encourage construction of high-quality, well-designed industrial developments through adopting a proper development standard. There is no evidence indicating that any of the proposed amendments will have detrimental impact on public health, safety, and general welfare. An addendum was prepared that assessed the proposed land use designation changes, which is intended to allow for additional permitted land uses in Lot 14. And it analyzed the proposed project for consistency with the original environmental impact report that the specific plan had. And it determined, if possible, if the proposed project would have any new or detrimental impacts than previously identified in the original environmental impact report. City staff has peer reviewed the memorandum prepared by Fair and Pierce and concurs with its findings and conclusions. In summary, the proposed additional uses on Lot 14 have lower trip generation rates than currently permitted uses. And the number of traffic trips will not exceed the trip ceiling identified in the final environmental impact report. The total number of trips was established by the build-out of the specific plan area, and therefore staff is recommending for City Council to adopt Resolution number 2956 and Resolution number 2957, which would approve addendum number 2 to the environmental impact report and approve the El Segundo South Campus specific plan amendments. And I do have the definitions if you guys want to look at them. So warehouse and distribution is one of the additional uses we will be allowing in Lot 14. And I just wanted to highlight once again that freight forwarding and mini storage will continue to be prohibited. And the applicant
Can
is
you go
also...
back to that slide, please?
Yeah. And the applicant is also present to answer any questions.
Yeah, so if anyone has questions specifically for CDC, we can call them up.
Are you saying warehousing is allowed, but freight forwarding and personal storage are not allowed?
That is correct.
And we're being asked basically to upgrade the zoning on this parcel and give a bunch of additional entitlements, correct? What do we get in return?
So I will pass that question on to the applicant, but I also wanted to highlight that the warehouse and distribution use is a use that's already permitted in the land use designation that they are seeking. It's just that that lot 14 was previously commercial and now it's going to have that in addition, but
Right, we're upgrading the
Yes.
land use of lot 14.
Correct.
As part of the specific plan.
Yes.
That's what we're being asked to do. I
Correct,
understand
yes.
that. Okay.
Okay, I got a question on the warehouse and the distribution. I know data centers were in there. I know those could be beneficial with the utility user tax and the energy consumption. This is a question. On the warehousing and distribution, what's the intent there and how does that affect our tax base? I can't recall. I mean, BLT wouldn't really be a business license tax benefit. What's the revenue implication for warehousing and distribution? And what do we think the intent is from the applicant? Maybe that's a question for the applicant.
Yeah, the second half of that probably is better directed towards the applicant, but from an impact standpoint, the warehouse and distribution is generally tied to a business that's housed at that warehouse for distribution of their own product and good. And so as the council might be familiar, our tax base or our business license tax base is on headcount and square footage. So it's rather comparable to a brick and mortar retail in the sense that retail would be a much smaller square footage, but higher headcount and higher actual sales tax, whereas a warehouse would be, significantly larger, so less headcount, but they would be made up with the square footage. I don't have a dollars to dollars comparison on that specifically. It's something that we can look into and report back to the council on this. There will be a
I guess I'm
second
just trying to
reading.
understand too, Mr. Allen, are we talking like cross docks? What's the extent to which they could develop warehouse? When I think warehouse and distribution, I think like 3PL, like full-on cross docks, multiple bays. Are there any limitations on warehousing and distribution uses? I can't imagine it would really be practical to do it there, but I'd hate to see a huge cross dock at, El Segundo Boulevard, for example.
Yeah, there's no current limitations in the specific plan now for the zone as it is today. And so looking at is the map? Yeah, the map's in here. Looking at the expansion of the blue zone, that the warehouse and distribution is already permitted in the rest of the blue zone. What we're doing is The applicant is proposing to expand that blue zone where this circle is upwards to entail all of parcel 14 shown on this map. So we did not do a dollars comparison from a sales tax standpoint. What staff did was we included a buffer zone for the first 100 feet off of El Segundo Boulevard to preserve that from becoming a data center or a parking lot, in order to preserve that as geared towards a pedestrian-oriented use that would drive foot traffic and potential sales tax revenue.
Got it, thank you. Any other questions for staff or the applicant?
Yeah.
Wait, you need to let the applicant speak and then close it and then do your questions.
Okay, would the applicant like to speak? I think we can keep asking questions of staff and the applicant and then close and then go to comments. Okay, we're gonna open up the public hearing. Do I have a motion? No, I don't need to do that. Public hearing is now open for public input. Mr. Rose.
Mr. Mayor, council members, Alex Rose, Continental Development Corporation, on behalf of Continental and Mar Ventures, owners of the property. First, a couple of overarching things. I want to compliment the city staff, planning department on working with us to try and craft a solution for that particular parcel, which does really, in our mind, two things, and was our objective in coming back to the city. One is to try and increase the flexibility that we have to respond to a market in the commercial real estate industry, or market that I think everybody recognizes has been quite challenged for the last several years, continues to be challenged. When this property was originally entitled back in 2016, the vision was that there would be significant expansion of office tech type space, R&D space, like we saw elsewhere on the Raytheon campus. It was Raytheon's intention that ultimately they would be able to use that as they grew their business. That obviously has not, it's not the current environment. Whether it's the future environment or not remains to be seen. And we purchased it with, frankly, those entitlements in mind, and hopefully that objective of achieving those. The market right now is not, as I said, very kind to on the demand side. So we approached the city and said, we've got two parcels there that have the potential to be combined into a single use. We don't know what that user might look like, but right now we've got zoning that doesn't mirror each other, and therefore you would end up with one set of uses on the lower one, a different set of uses on the upper one. So this was really about flexibility in order to meet the market, so that we did not sit there for an extended period of time with vacant land, because we were unable to deliver sufficient land for whatever use might come along. So that's the background. A couple of things that I would reemphasize that staff, that staff brought up. When we have a user, this will come back to the Planning Commission and the city under the city's site plan and approval process. I think that's important for two reasons. One is it is obviously the rules under which we operate, but I think also it'll give us the ability to reinforce to the community that we understood what was important to the city and the community along El Segundo Boulevard, and trying to activate that and not have blank, empty, dark spaces, even if there's something going on behind the wall. Secondly, as staff noted, we are not taking away any permitted uses. We are simply mirroring what is already permitted otherwise in under the specific plan. I think at one point it was probably envisioned that something similar to what we developed on Chargers Commons could continue across the El Segundo frontage. The reality of it is that the amount of El Segundo frontage and the way you would access that site really does not make it suitable for the type of retail that we've got next door. It's very suitable for office, it's very suitable for R&D, it's suitable for all the other additional uses that we're seeking to mirror, but it does not work real well for in the retail environment. I think staff made it clear, but just so I re-emphasize it, this change to the specific plan affects property owned by Continental and MAR, not Raytheon. Raytheon has nothing to do with this application. It doesn't affect their land. They are not part of any of this process. The prohibited uses, as staff pointed out, remain the same. We're not adding prohibited uses to the northern parcel that otherwise would not be allowed under the specific plan. And as I said, the real driver here is to create a contiguous parcel to be able to respond to the market when the market puts something in front of us. There was a question about the economics, and I know we haven't really quantified what was permitted on the 14 and not on the 13, or vice versa, on the 13, not the 14. But one thing that we did do in working with staff is we did ask the question, what would the benefit to the city be in terms of data center? It's about a $1.9 million ad under the UUT as the city has it currently configured. We do not have a user in tow. This is not come here and then tomorrow we're going to come in with a site plan. This is to be able to go to the market and say, here's a better site for potential development and users and a wider range of users than the more constrained options, excuse me, that we have under the existing entitlements. Happy to answer any questions.
So every time I see a big presentation like this with a lot of language about how great it is, it makes me leery. Sorry, I'm in sales and that's just the way I look at it. It just means someone's trying to sell me something. So you mentioned that this does not have anything to do with Raytheon, doesn't affect Raytheon, doesn't affect any of it, but the reality is, if I'm reading this correctly, and please correct me if I'm wrong, the original development agreement was with Raytheon.
This portion of the development agreement has been assigned to us. They
Right,
had no rights, no say, no nothing.
But I'm saying in 2016, when this was given me today, so I just want to make sure I understand correctly. I got a bunch of stuff right now, and I'm just trying to make sure. I didn't have this before.
Your
Right,
baseline,
so
yes.
what I'm saying is in 2016, which was 4 councils ago, there was a decision made, a development agreement was made to direct what this use was supposed to be at that time.
Correct.
Were all the things that you're asking for available at the time and just not added to the DA? It just wasn't discussed? I'm just saying there's a reason why the decision was made when it was made.
I do not have the specific recollection, but I think what we've been able to derive during our discussions with the city, because we didn't go back and look at that record, it went to the activation desire that I mentioned. You know, ideally, you would see across El Segundo Boulevard all kinds of retail, drive-in, community serving, active type of uses. And if Nash wasn't where it was and the Green Line wasn't where it was, now just speaking as a developer, that becomes possible. What other compromises were made during the 2016 entitlement process? I'm sorry, I just don't recall.
No, I understand. But I'm just saying that.
But that was the objective.
Kind of my point on this is we're now about ready to make a decision that will affect 4 councils from now. So this is one of the things about making decisions on development agreements and then changing them and then changing them and then changing them, is that they're never worth the cost of the paper they're written on. And that's, you know, and you'll remember when the whole charger thing was in here, I was sitting right over where Ryan's sitting right now, and my concern on that is that we're allowing the development agreement to change. We should be getting almost 7 acres of green space, but we're not gonna get it. We're gonna kick that down the road. I don't see how this is not doing a similar thing. I understand from a business perspective, I get you completely. You want to expand the use of it to make it more marketable. I understand. I just don't see what the benefit is to the city. And my job up here is to say what's in the best benefit, what's the best interest of the city itself. And that's what I'm struggling with.
Understand. So clearly it's not in the best interest of the city to see a vacant piece of property there. Can we agree on that?
It's also not in your best interest to see a vacant piece of property, so
I
I
don't
get
think
it.
it's
But
in-
what
I
I'm
don't think
saying
it's
is,
in
I'm gonna
anybody.
throw it
One
down.
second, folks, just, we're getting into actual discussion now, not questions. This is
Okay.
now an actual discussion, so if we're
Sorry.
going to do that, that's okay, we're going to have to close the public hearing. So are there any more specific questions and also opinions?
Yeah, I've got a question. You also owned Lot 24, the green space on the right, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. That's zoned as open space and recreation. How are you going to get that land activated so it can be used as it's zoned there as an open recreation space?
Right now, we're not. I mean, it is what it is. It's open space, it's zoning. We're not seeking approvals for anything else on that property. You can access it from the roadway that comes in off El Segundo Boulevard that serves the Metro lot. It's the discussion that we went through when we offered it up, and the city decided not, to decline the offer. Right now, it's going to be planted nicely. I wish I had a better solution. Candidly, I wish I had a better plan to work with, but this is the plan that in 2016 was adopted. And, it's kind of what collectively we're stuck with.
The 100 feet setback, how do you envision that working? And I know the idea is we want to keep El Segundo Boulevard activated. We don't want a parking garage going right up to the
Correct.
street. 100 feet, does that mean you're going to put retail there? You're going to actually put something there? Or it's just going to be landscaping and look nice, but it's not going to be activated?
I think the answer depends on the user. I mean, the more that we tend towards an office use, if we're able to pull off something like that, I think you will see some parking out there, but you may also see, as we see throughout, not just Continental Park, but throughout Superblock and some of the other areas where landlords are activating these surface spaces to amenitize the buildings. As I said, I'd love to have a Starbucks out there, notwithstanding the fact that we got one, at the other end. But from a retail development standpoint and how that works and how those users evaluate sites, it just doesn't work. And it's...
Right, so if you were to do a data center, you're probably not going to have much of a incentive to do retail in front of a data center, right? You've got a handful of employees.
Not necessarily. I mean, this is a 6,000, at its full capacity, forget about what we've carved off for the Chargers. This is a 6,000 person campus. And I think depending on what the use is that we're able to secure when the market speaks to us, there's all kinds of creativity in the development side. But to sit here today without a user in hand, it's a hypothetical I can't answer.
Understood. I'm just trying to understand that, and I think we can agree that if it's an office type of space, we've got more people, we've got a higher tax base, and a bigger chance for retail and street activation, which is the goal of this specific plan. If you put a data center there, if you put a warehouse there, we're not going to get those benefits that are kind of auxiliary, but also very, very important to what we want to do with this part of town. So,
Again, I just remind council members, sorry, I hate to be a stickler up here, but if there are questions, that's great. If they're not questions, they start to become opinions or your position on this project, then we're going to have to close public hearing and start moving to council discussion.
Can I ask a staff question on a conditional use for that? It has a active helipad. When we permit helipad uses, and this is, I know a little bit of, you make the call deep into the municipal code, if it is a commercial heli-taxi, is that part of the helipad's conditional use, or is that only the helicopter conditional use only for the site, for like if the Continental Development's proprietary helicopter flying them around, can it land there? Can they use heli-taxi on that?
We'd have to actually look at the entitlement approvals for that CUP when that helipad was approved, if one exists. That's probably been there for some time. My assumption is that it's specific to that location, and the municipal code requires at least a minimum of 2,500 feet to any other helipad. So that it may require some, you're talking about using the existing or adding additional?
No, there's an existing, or there used to be an
Yeah.
existing one right there.
It's
It's
yeah,
within 2,500
It's
feet
under
of
a
the
pile
wall on
of
top of
dirt
the
right
town.
now, but
Yeah.
it's there.
It's probably intended for at the time private use, but I don't, we'd have to look at the entitlements to see if it's specified commercial versus private and that, the nature of that approval.
Sure. Thank you.
I got a question, Mr. Rose. So if I understand correctly, there's no consideration for green space, or that's not being triggered right now? Because can you remind us, what was the trigger for 20% of the land? Is that the trigger?
You're talking about the 7 acres?
Yeah, I mean, we were told, and I think we went back and negotiated this and conceded a bit with CDC at one point. We deferred on the green space.
The trigger is in phase 3, not phase.
Phase 3, okay.
Right, because that's,
It's one or the other, or 20% of phase 3? What is the?
It's 20% of the campus area, or at least 28.44 acres.
So cumulatively,
Yeah,
not
yeah.
any individual project, right?
The next time Raytheon wants to do something, it's going to get triggered.
correct.
It's
Okay,
right-
so
it's
this
right
is
on-
already carved out, so this doesn't trigger anything.
Correct.
But if there's another carve out of
Correct.
parcels, then it would be triggered. and
That's
then-
correct.
Okay, thank you. That helps clarify. Any other questions from council before we close the public hearing? We're good? Okay. Do I have a motion to close the public hearing?
Pimentel, so moved.
Thank you. We have a second?
Baldino seconds.
Great. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 5-0. Thank you. Okay, council discussion. Sorry about that.
So let me answer Lance's question about what happened in 2015. Raytheon came to the city and the planning commission and said, we no longer need this open space. The federal rules have changed. We want to upgrade the zoning. We're going to put office space here, and we're going to move employees here, and we're going to upscale our employment agreement. And we gave them those benefits. And at that time, as soon as they developed phase 1, it triggered all the city entitlements, which meant building that road that we now have by the Chargers and giving us the 7.5 acres. They came back in 2019 and said, we want to push the road off on whoever buys it, the gentleman here. And so we kicked the can down the road once again on the 7.5 acres. What Raytheon ended up doing is selling this land. They've developed it as they have without office space, but retail, and that's been a benefit to us. The frustration I have and what I feel is constantly giving land zoning upgrades on this development agreement and this site-specific plan without ever landing the plane on what the city was supposed to get in return, which is 7.5 acres of park space, which Raytheon has. I think the last amendment to the development agreement, which we have, which says the development of the sports project, and the Raytheon also built 5,000 square feet on phase 4, didn't trigger their entitlement. So we kicked it down again. So because we are dealing with zoning that is not owned by Raytheon, are we to understand that they can go ahead and develop this and it doesn't trigger any entitlement to actually give us the public benefits? Is that the correct understanding?
Because this one was already in phase 1, this property was part of phase 1 and they're changing it, it doesn't trigger that next phase. And so it's that next phase which is going to trigger the open space park requirement.
This is phase 2. So you're saying this property's in phase 2. Phase 1 is common chargers. This is next door.
Right.
The only thing that's been done is the chargers and the road. Phase 3 is where the parkland is, which on this map shows office and industrial. And then I guess you're telling us we can't enforce this development agreement and ask Raytheon to do one of two things. One, give us 7.5 acres of park. Two, give us something comparable to that, which I have in 2019, staff valued 7.5 acres at $15 million. So this is what I'm trying to understand. This is not the time or the place, and nor do we have the leverage or the legal wherewithal to even discuss or open this conversation about how is it Raytheon makes good on delivering this public benefit, because we're dealing with phase 2.
You can have the discussion, but I mean, the fact is this property is not owned by Raytheon, it's owned by CDC Mar. I don't know if CDC Mar has any sort of leverage against Raytheon to make Raytheon go donate that property to the city at this point in time. I'm guessing not, but I don't know that for a fact. So do you have no leverage? I can't tell you that. I just know that this property is not owned by Raytheon. It's owned by CDC Mar, who already has entitlement rights, and they want to slightly modify those. And so I don't know that Raytheon's really going to care about that, since they no longer have an interest in this property because they've transferred all the rights in it to CDC Mar. Now, you're correct. I mean, the council did twice change that condition to allow a little more leeway before that parkland was given to, or was to be transferred. I mean, they were relatively small amounts of property were going to cause the transfer, but the transfer was technically triggered twice. Now, Raytheon said that they would not move forward with those projects if that transfer was going to occur. Whether that's true or not, again, I can't tell you.
Okay. So then, Mr. Allen, what, if any, recourse does this city council have? Are we just to sit patiently and wait for Raytheon to attempt to develop phase 4 or phase 3? And as I read it, if they don't pull any permits or want to develop, then that obligation to give us the parkland never gets triggered.
Right, it's triggered simply by the development or sale of the land. I suppose the city could attempt to open a negotiation on the DA, but both parties would have to be willing to have that conversation. But beyond that, I can't think of anything off the top of my head other than the triggers that exist today or opening the DA for discussion.
All right, fair enough. Now to address my comments to the ask of us today, I have concern about allowing a data center or a warehouse as a matter of right so close to El Segundo Boulevard. I do believe it was zoned office commercial because that's the use of that land that the city thought was most beneficial. At the same time, I don't want to make the ultimate development of this parcel impractical. Not impossible, but just impractical. So I guess I'm asking staff, would it not make more sense to wait until there's a user and a user group so that we have some understanding of what the impact will be on this area? Because if we give up these rights now, they get these rights. We don't get to take them away and say, you know, we don't want a data center there. We want an office building. We want something else. Like we are giving up the choice that we have on what we want this to look like by approving this.
Staff's position at the time when going through this process with the applicant was really geared towards maintaining as much as we could the pedestrian active elements along El Segundo Boulevard, which is why we included that 100-foot buffer. And we thought that with that, along with the mandatory site plan review and AUP that would go to the Planning Commission, based on the findings that are required for that entitlement, there would be some discretion that could be practiced from a site planning standpoint, not a use standpoint, but from a site planning standpoint to ensure that the uses fronting and the orientation of the buildings fronting El Segundo would maintain that pedestrian activity or opportunity for it.
Could we not just say that you can have your industrial and your warehousing with an AUP, and then everything comes to us in one package, and we can look at the project as a whole?
It's actually a combination of both. It would be this, the AUP plus the site plan review together. It would trigger both if it was within that buffer location. And the site plan review is actually more stringent than the AUP. The AUP is actually an administrative process that is ratified by the Planning Commission. The key discretionary action that the commission would be considering is the site plan review. So we thought we had a level of comfort that those findings and that discussion could happen when and if a development occurred that would trigger the site plan review.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just a quick question. Do we know how much office space, square footage, it would, like what's the break-even point between office square footage and a data center? If I heard $1.9 million in annual taxes and UUT, et cetera, how many square feet? I know Barbara Voss just did this analysis. I asked her recently, like how much we're getting for our office space in terms of square footage headcount calculation for business license tax. So that's the first point, is that my gut is that we're actually highest and best use is a data center versus an office from a from a revenue standpoint. Assuming we can't build a mid-rise, which PCT just went back to the bank, didn't they? So we have 3 towers on PCH mid-rise. Product is struggling all over LA County, more so than any other commercial office product inventory out there. So I hear a developer saying there's not a market for office space necessarily. We're at 25% vacancy right now, last I looked, versus a historical of about 12. So we're double where we're sitting traditionally, which is far better than the rest of the region, but still problematic. So I would want to understand a little bit better the math, that versus an office, assuming we could even build an office, but it doesn't sound like there's demand for an office anyway right now. I don't know of anyone that's like saying, I want to build a mid-rise on PCH right now. But unless you have...
We did the analytics on the data center because it was an unknown element to us, and did find that compared to a brick and mortar retail, it generates significantly more revenue through UUT than retail sales does. We haven't done the analytics or the comparative with the office space. It's speculative, but there has not been a market for new office space at the moment, and that could change, but it's not the direction we're seeing things go in. And so our priority was just focused on finding a solution that may facilitate some future development and leave room for a future discretionary action to really have the conversation about site layout and use orientation within the actual parcel 14 itself and 13.
Yeah, I struggle more with the warehouse and the distribution, just knowing what I've heard regionally from like the Inland Empire, for example. Obviously, they have the burden of all those DCs and everything, but the wear and tear, we see it on El Segundo Boulevard already with Chevron running oil tankers back and forth, and that, warehouse and distribution is very general. That could mean a lot of different things. And so that's the only part about this that makes me a little nervous is what does that actually mean? Does that mean the entire parcel could be potentially warehouse and distribution with vehicles coming and go? And I don't know how anyone would justify that given the land value to do that at that space.
We would get a chunk of the sales tax if it comes out of their micro distribution. I mean, that's real and a tangible benefit. I would also say let's not forget that this will back up to a train line that is not significantly elevated, and those trains will go from 2 cars to 3 cars, and that train line will extend all the way up to West Adams instead of going to Norwalk. It's going to be a north-south train, so those trains will be heavy utilized. So if you're thinking about putting office, there's a sound impact there that might make that a little bit unattractive. I do think we're hearing that people will come back. I mean, Sir Morpheus just took out that space across the street. Raytheon says they're bringing 2,500 people back to the office, but it'll be a long stretch before they fill into things north of there. I think that when we first put this over there, we did envision commercial built around those office workers. I think one of the concerns then we had was high margin, very low turnover businesses like micro storage. Micro storage and doggy daycare were like the 2 things we dreaded to have any part of because you never get rid of them. So to that end, I set a reasonably low bar as far as what sort of adventurous piece they want to put on there besides it being dirt. Which it has been for some time. So I don't, I'm not going to make the proverbial great the enemy of the good on this. If there's something that makes this a possible development corridor as opposed to a non-development corridor, I suspect that highest and best use will find it. And I think there's probably a limited chance that it becomes a micro distribution center warehouse. And frankly, even if it did, those things are lucrative, and we can reinforce a road around that. Looking at you, Elias. No, he's ignoring me after we spent all that money on my SB1 road on El Segundo Boulevard.
And also, and this is really true, the demand for data centers is going up, especially with AI computing, and that is very lucrative for the city, and we already have quite a few in town. And then I wanted to ask about the electrical grid or the electrical accessibility to the electrical power lines there. Is it adequate? Is it something we need to think about?
Staff hasn't received any feedback on this side of town as it relates to available power. The service upgrades that seem to be experiencing the most difficulty are on the north side of, or northeastern side of town. I don't have the exact data available. Coincidentally, we were on a call with Edison. They showed us a map and said that the power availability in El Segundo is best in the region. The map showed that, but we do receive phone calls, but most of the time it's the northeastern side of town.
So to Mayor's point and Chris's point, this is vacant land right now, so the sooner we can get it optimized and generate revenue, the better. So looking for opportunities like a data center could be more of a turnkey than anything else at this point.
There's a data center next to the aquatic facility, and you'll see behind it all of their generators and transformers. They create and generate a lot of the power just to sustain those data centers. So what they're pulling out of the ground is probably not as important as what they're going to have to build and maintain there. My concern is if 100 feet is enough to really keep the intent of what we wanted to do with that area, right? I don't want a parking garage, a data center. It's not going to activate El Segundo Boulevard as we originally planned, but I don't know. 100 feet doesn't seem like a lot of space to do much with.
Yeah, can you break down the 100 feet? You said pedestrian activation, but
Yeah.
what do you envision more specifically?
Well, we landed on 100 feet because that's essentially the distance that the Chargers Commons, the face, not the face of those buildings, but the back face, the face that's facing south, is about 100 feet. We wanted there to be interconnectivity between Lot 14 and the Chargers Commons retail strip itself. And so that's essentially how we came up with the 100 feet. It was something that was developable. It would ensure some level of connectivity to parcels 15 and 16. It was essentially, it wasn't arbitrary, but it is essentially, that's how we drew the line.
So, okay, but you could do like an extension of, you could have a pad with 3 or 4 retail potentially in that space, or no?
It's not a wide, parcel 14, as you can, it's sort of triangular. It's not a great shape.
Okay, so like 1 or 2.
You might see a one-off. It will probably require a development that entails the entire parcel to see something that makes sense. It's not going to be a one-off by itself. And that's something that the commission will have to consider through the site plan review, is really the continuity between parcels 16, 15, and 14 as it relates to the intent of the specific plan was to generate foot traffic and generate retail sales.
So it's more of an aesthetic walking path, so it matches what we have at Chargers Commons, but it won't have any actual use retail-wise.
I think that's something that's considered through the site plan review process. It's an important factor that would go into that discretionary action.
But it could be though retail, storefront, and warehousing or showroom. Like a showroom, I think of like Tesla. So they have these showrooms with cars, but then they have service centers and warehousing in the back potentially, something like that. Who knows? We're trying to understand what potentially could be there.
So, Alex, before you and I are about to get into it, before we got put into our corners. No, it's okay.
Before you do,
go ahead.
So you were asking Michael about what's possible. So, certainly if you look at our property down in Torrance, right, the Sky Park complex there on Hawthorne Boulevard, you can see the integration between Hawthorne Boulevard adjacent pad, parking, medical office buildings. Could that happen here? Sure. The problem that we're facing right now is there is no market. There's no demand. And it doesn't matter whether we're talking about data center or whether we're talking about retail or we're talking about office. I mean, I've got, as the city well knows, I have a 200,000 square foot mid-rise class AAA office permit ready for Rosecrans. We cannot build that because there is no demand, and the construction costs would require rents for a modest return 30% higher than historical. And you're not going to get that when you get a 20%, when you have a 20% vacancy, as the mayor pointed out. So, Ryan, to your point, yes, I think there are possibilities. And I agree with Michael that as we get a user identified and start to do a site planning exercise with them, and we can use both 13 and 14 for that, I think there are possibilities. Do I think we can mirror exactly Chargers Commons? No, because we don't have the same kind of access, we don't have the same kind of width, we don't have the same kind of frontage. But that doesn't mean that we can't do nothing, and it just has to be surface parking. We'll see what the use demands.
So back
Now
up.
I'm ready, Lance.
All right, man. So I understand the business aspect of this, as I was saying. Like, I get it. I know exactly what you're up against. It's a big challenge. I understand that. My issue, to be honest with you, is not with CDC Mar Ventures, and it's not with Richard, it's not with you. My issues with Raytheon, it's my issues with the fact that past councils have kicked this can down the road twice, and the likelihood is that that green space will never, ever happen because there's no reason for Raytheon to build out. So they checkmated us on this. I get it. I'm pretty
more
sure.
optimistic
Well, let's
than
this
you are.
way. I don't think anybody up here will be around to see that day.
Oh,
And
you're
the
all
idea
young.
was,
You'll
and
be
the
here.
idea is that it gets, these agreements, these things happen, and councils change, and staff changes, and things change, and people forget. So that's not your issue, though, that's ours. So I
No,
understand what you're trying.
actually, it is my issue because
I'm talking about this one
as a
in particular.
community.
No, I got you, but I think you understand what I'm trying to say, though.
I know.
That's my challenge with this. I just want to make sure that we are not boxing ourselves into a corner, Michael, on being able to make a decision. If something comes up and a plan comes up, and did we just give carte blanche to put in there whatever is within the right, and we have, well, it's to what we agreed upon now, so they can just get and do it. Do we get a situation, what Ryan was talking about, where, okay, we get what this looks like, but we really don't like what that looks like, and do we have the ability as a council or as a planning commission to say no?
Yeah, through the site plan review, there are mandatory findings related to the site planning. What I would suggest, if there is a desire for an additional layer to couple with that, would be the AUP for all of those uses. So it's still permitted. It's a discretionary action. It can happen in tandem with the site plan review. It's an additional layer. It's not that much more burdensome in terms of amount of information that's required, but it is additional findings more specific to the use that are required for the commission to make. And so it's another level of discretion that the commission has. It's not as robust as a conditional use permit, which could be extremely costly and time consuming to make the very same or similar use findings. So that would be sort of the next level of discretion I would recommend to council.
Yeah, I'm
That
not trying
lives
to-
and dies at the commission. It doesn't come to council.
I'm not trying to put handcuffs on the owner of the property, but I do want to be able to, for us to have a say in this when the time comes. That's all. Ryan, are you? what do
The
you think?
AUP would allow them to market as we have these rights. We just have to go through these steps and fill out this paperwork with the city and have a hearing and.
That's right. I mean, it's a perspective issue. I know, when they're marketing the property,
Right.
the least amount of hurdles, the better, obviously. But this is a sort of a hybrid version. It's permitted. There's some discretionary action that's required. It's not a by right per se.
No, I'm happy with that compromise. And let me just state, Continental and CDC Mar have been fantastic partners, and the developments you've done have always been great. I'm not slighting your work in any means. I just want to make sure we don't lose sight of what we set out to do in 2015 as far as activating this area and really trying to energize it. And so I didn't want to give carte blanche to parking and data centers. We want to still optimize as best we can. And so I do like the idea of having the AUP. If that the applicant's okay with it, of course.
I'm going to be the contrarian on this one. Continental Development Company is a privately held corporation that plays a long game. They've demonstrated over and over and over again that they build responsible projects. They want to do what's best for the city, but also for themselves. I truly believe that. I've never gotten any indication that anything further from the truth would be the case. So I would not suggest we deviate from the process. We have a process in place that the city has taken very seriously with the planning department. I would prefer that we stay the course. And I'm confident they're going to build something that's going to be good for the city. I trust them. They've demonstrated over and over again. By the way, I was looking at these agreements. They gave us $1 million for the plunge Richard has committed 6 million in total minimum for the plunge. Every turn, they have supported the city. So I would not want to make this any more burdensome than it is. We have an issue with Raytheon. We can all agree with that we feel like we got burned with the fields. If we could get fields tomorrow, that'd be great. As it is, we're getting a pool built, and CDC is putting in almost half of that. So that would be my opinion, but I will defer to the rest of the council.
So I'm going to concur with Drew. I feel like, as he stated, Continental has always been a partner with the city and has always provided us with the best options for our city. So I'd like to move forward with approval of this motion.
Pimentel, second.
Can I just ask one thing before we do that? If this was anyone else other than CDC, we would be asking for an AUP, right? So we are picking and choosing who we do business with and how.
No,
So-
actually, I'm saying we stay the course. We just added another burden. I'm saying we stay the course.
We just asked for an, Ryan and I were like, we're good with it, just can we do the AUP? And then now we're saying no. But if it was anybody other than them, we would probably ask for it.
The way I understand this, we actually added another requirement. That's more than the process calls for. We actually added an additional constraint on the developer. We added one.
How do we? Can I ask this? Do we have two dueling motions effectively? A unmoved motion and
No,
a motion?
yeah, I haven't moved
No,
yet.
he didn't make a motion.
No, he
was-
did. I say if there's an alternative, would it help us to state them both?
Yeah,
if we're
but
doing
let me-
an
say it.
and/or?
What they're asking for is an upgrade in the zoning of one of their parcels to match the other parcel. The reason why that parcel has different zoning is because the city decided the best use for that El Segundo would be office and retail to energize it. By allowing them to have the additional upgrade of industrial and everything else, they will get to build by right data centers, parking lots, things that are contrary to what the original plan was. The AUP requirement would just say, you have that right to develop it, but you've got to apply for the AUP. That's just another, like Mr. Allen said, you're going to have to do the site plan review anyway. The AUP just allows us to ask for extra findings to say, yeah, this does make sense with the general plan. So it allows them to market it with these extra zoning upgrades, but just gives the planning commission and the city a little more oversight on what actually comes through. Because as he said here, he doesn't know who the user is. He doesn't have a client yet. So we want to give him the flexibility to get this out to market and say, we have options here, but we should also maintain some oversight over what gets developed there by just saying, you don't get it as a matter of right. You can get it, and there's a way to get it, but it would be through an AUP process, which is not that different from the site plan. You're coming to planning commission either way. It's not like a new hearing or anything.
Mayor, if I can provide additional context that might help formulate a motion or find some path forward. The current draft amendment contemplates an AUP already for two things: a parking lot or garage or data center that encroaches into that 100-foot buffer to El Segundo Boulevard. Everything else would just be permitted by right. So I did hear concerns about, warehouse distribution. It does not apply to that, and so everything else that's already permitted, or light industrial uses, or high and medium bay labs, those would not be subject to the AUP. So they would only currently as drafted, and that's something that the applicant and staff worked on collectively. The earlier suggestion was maybe broadening that to the other uses that there might be concern about. So if that helps sort of the understanding the current proposal.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. Mr. Baldino, would you like to make a motion based on what your statement?
We have one pending.
We have one, right? Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we got to vote on that. We have a first. Did you second that, Carol? You made the motion.
I
Pimentel
seconded.
it. Okay. We're going to call for a vote unless you're open to a substitute motion, but I think we should just call for the vote. So, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Nope.
No.
Okay,
So we have a
3-2.
resolution and ordinance
Yes.
to go with this, so I'll do that based upon that motion. A resolution approving an addendum to the El Segundo South Campus specific plan environmental impact report approved under EA-905 for a land use change of Lot 14 within Phase 2 of the El Segundo South Campus specific plan area pursuant to the California Environmental Quality Act is ready for adoption.
Who would like to make a motion to adopt the resolution?
So moved.
Okay, do we have a second?
Pimentel second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay.
No.
Okay.
And then there's an ordinance for introduction, and ordinance amend the El Segundo South Campus Specific Plan, modifying land use designation of Lot 14 from commercial office mixed use to office industrial mixed use, ready for introduction.
Boyles will introduce.
And this will be then placed on the next council regular meeting for possible second read and adoption.
All right. Great debate, colleagues. 3-2 votes are a good thing. Thank you. Thank you, staff. Thank you, CDC.
Thank you, Mr. Rose.
All right, staff presentations. Number 8, revised athletic field facility use and allocation policy. I show Mrs. Mancini here.
It didn't work even after you put the good name on.
Okay. Good evening, Honorable Mayor Boyles, Mayor Pro Tem Pimentel, and members of the City Council. In 2004, a Field and Facility Allocation Policy Task Force drafted an athletic field and facility use policy that outlined the city's procedure and allocation priority for the permitted use of athletic fields and facilities. Since its origination almost 20 years ago, the policy has undergone several revisions and modifications to meet the changing needs of the community. The most recent revisions and modifications have been drafted by a subcommittee that included department staff and 2 members of the Recreation and Park Commission. The draft document was approved by the Recreation and Parks Commission in May and is now before the council for review, feedback, and approval. In addition, tonight staff is seeking council direction on other pertinent issues that have arisen during the past 6 months related to field allocation. Slide. Just as a reminder, the current members of the Youth Sports Advisory Committee include El Segundo AYSO, El Segundo Babe Ruth, El Segundo Girls Softball, El Segundo Lacrosse, Little League, Inline Hockey, the El Segundo Unified School District, El Segundo Youth Volleyball, and the Eagles of El Segundo Youth Football and Cheer. Any new organizations that wish to join the committee must apply for admission and meet the following requirements. They must have at least 100 El Segundo resident players. They must have at least 75% El Segundo resident players, and they must have not-for-profit status registered with the state. Slide, please. The allocation policy includes all city-owned fields as well as Raytheon Fields, Center Street School Fields, and Richmond Fields. Based on the recent changes to the joint use agreement with the El Segundo Unified School District, additional athletic fields may be subject to this policy as well. Slide, please. The revised maintenance responsibilities for fields and facilities include several key components. First, due to the revised joint use agreement, the Richmond and Center Street fields are maintained by El Segundo Unified School District, but scheduled by city staff. Raytheon fields continue to be maintained by Raytheon. City fields are maintained on a large scale by Parks Maintenance Team and by the city's contracted landscaper Parkwood. However, language has been added to the policy that requires user groups of the ball fields to provide additional basic maintenance to the fields between games and after the final games of the day. Slide, please. The proposed revised wet field policy states that the fields may be closed for play in adverse weather conditions that render the field unsafe for play as determined by the Parks Maintenance Team. User groups can call the field closure hotline after 12 p.m. Monday through Friday and after 8 a.m. on Saturday and Sunday. The revised language also states that user groups may now call for an update on field closures after 12 p.m. on Saturdays and Sundays, with the understanding that field prep time after 12 p.m. may impact play schedules. Slide, please. The following changes to the policy have been reviewed and recommended for approval by the Recreation and Parks Commission. Number 1, the Director of Recreation, Parks, and Library has the discretion to implement exceptions to the field allocation policy. Number 2, random field use audits will be conducted by staff to ensure fields are being utilized as requested. Number 3, all groups must submit and maintain the following documents prior to opening day: insurance information, city business license, and workers' comp insurance. Number 4, user groups must submit city special event application for any special event, such as opening day parades, end of league parties, etc. Fee waiver requests may be granted in accordance to the council-approved special event fee waiver procedure, which maxes out at a 75% discount on city fees. Number 5, field requests will be submitted on a quarterly basis during the winter, spring, summer, and fall, or just preceding those seasons. We also added a 1-year probation clause for new members and made some changes to the formatting and language. Slide, please. Additionally, a few key points have been raised in the past 6 months related to field allocation and the role of the Youth Sports Advisory Committee that will benefit from additional clarification. One issue that has been raised and discussed is the field-specific play designation. Currently, within the field-specific play, 2 fields are reserved for specific activity. Stevenson is utilized only for hardball, baseball, and city events and programs, and the softball field is utilized for softball and city-related events. This resulted in a higher use and related wear and tear to George Brett Field and Campus El Segundo for all other sports, including soccer and most recently flag football. Staff is seeking feedback from the council and/or the Park and Rec Commission on 2 options to the field-specific play designation, including leaving the current designation as is, removing the field-specific play from Stevenson and softball fields, or alternatively, adding field-specific play clauses for Campus El Segundo and Brett Field. Slide, please. Next, there is clarification needed with regards to the role that the Youth Sports Advisory Committee plays in field allocation decisions. There is language within the policy that states that the Youth Sports Advisory Committee members have voting rights, though those voting responsibilities are not clearly defined. Some options for these voting rights is to have the Youth Sports Advisory Committee weigh in on any or all of the following: voting on field allocation requests that fall outside of the field allocation policy, and that vote would become a recommendation to the Park and Rec Commission. Voting on new member applications, so the Youth Sports Advisory Committee would vote to approve or deny applications, and that vote would be a recommendation to the Rec and Park Commission as well. And finally, voting changes onto the field allocation policy. So the Youth Sports Advisory Committee would vote to approve or reject suggested changes to the field allocation policy as submitted by staff, and the vote would be a recommendation to the Rec and Park Commission. Staff seeks council input on these issues or direction to return to the Recreation and Park Commission for additional input from that body. That concludes my staff report, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
So it looks like there's 3 things you need from us tonight, if I'm counting correctly. Can you go to slide 7, please?
Slide 7, yes. Now I will. Yes.
All right, I think the question I had is on number 5 there. The field requests are going to be submitted on a quarterly basis, all right? So I think the issue, and I know we're going to get into it in the next
Yes.
thing, I think all field requests, all of that should be done in person. Because the emails that are sent out, all that stuff, it just gets lost. This group literally, if I was told, meets twice a year. I know when I was on it, it was twice a year. So add 2 more or whatever it's going to
Yes.
be, that this way no one misses a deadline.
Correct.
And at that time, you should be submitting what you want, whether it's on the school fields or on the city fields. It should all go in at the same time. That would be one recommendation I make on that. I think that'll clear up a lot of problems on who asked for what.
Agree.
And I missed a deadline, and you guys told me in July, and I was on vacation, and those are legit. I
Right.
think this year we literally sent out an email on July 7th. Okay,
Right.
people are gone.
Right.
You know, and I think that caused some of the issues we have. So I would really like to see on that field request piece that is an in-person meeting with all of those leagues. I don't know if
I
anybody has any
support
comment
that.
on
Yes.
that. All right.
I think that
As
makes
long
sense.
as that meeting is pre-established well in advance, so it's on people's
Yeah.
calendars.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes,
So like,
and-
it should be established, like, this is going to be this week every year. or
Right.
Like, so that's, then it's not in a holiday time frame.
Yeah, well, if it's four
Yeah.
times a year and you have a deadline, right?
Right.
It should be 30 days before that deadline. Just, this is the meeting we're going to have,
Right.
and you need to give us what you need at that point. It shouldn't be, hey, you've had it in the past and you're going to get it again. No, let's do it right, in my opinion.
Yes, I
Okay?
agree, and we are going to get into that a little bit more with the joint use agreement. But yes, we're going to coordinate specifically with the district on when they are doing their, and we're going to make them the exact same timeframes.
All right, cool. Can you go to number 8 now?
Sure. Number 8. Oh, slide 8.
Slide 8.
Yes.
Okay, I think this is this is going to be a fun one. I think in the end we've chosen to destroy Brett Field at the savings of Stevenson. Okay, so
would agree.
I think there's probably, and in the end, look, I'm not messing on AYSO here, but that's a lot of kids and it just tears everything up. I do believe we should be opening up Stevenson and potentially the softball field, but probably more Stevenson because that gets the least amount of use. But maybe we do it where it's the lowest, it's the youngest level. It's 6-year-olds, it's 7-year-olds. It's not the bigger kids that would be tearing them up more because most of the time they're out there with turf shoes and not necessarily cleats.
Correct.
And I think it might have a little bit less wear and tear in that on the outfield, especially in Stevenson, than currently. I mean, currently, if you go look at what the Brett Field outfield looks like, it's like a stampede. It's torn up. So that would be my suggestion on that, is that I think we need to open it up a little bit, but let's be reasonable about what we put on that field.
Could we, you'll know more about this than I will, or one of you who plays soccer, has kids who play soccer, would it be reasonable to prohibit cleats on the field?
No, not on a grass field, because that'll be a danger, because it gets wet and muddy, and then you're looking at liability. So,
So isn't one of the issues
turf
with
sheet.
Stevenson that it is a drainage area, so it gets very marshy, so it can't take the activity that maybe a Brett Field could sustain? Like, we had to be very careful about Stevenson, because it is can get very marshy, because it is our drainage field.
Brett Field's a swamp out there, too. That's the
I mean, I
same
think
problem.
we can, I would think we could deputize Rec and Parks to police the usage level of those things to maintain them. Are we going to, and I know this isn't necessarily within our purview yet, but can we program the other high school field, or the high school fields and the high school baseball field? I mean, that's a huge outfield. The middle school field back there, are those things that are, I mean, they're not in this, and I assume it's part of the joint use thing we will see,
Yes.
but when we do field allocations, can we allocate to that?
We can if they're not currently using the field.
One
I
of the
assure
problem-
you the vast majority of the time they're not using
And
it.
and when I say we can use it, so we are city, so we would come first. But as far as, the user groups, that would depend on their allocation. They're not going to come in, if we say, hey, we want to put AYSO on your field, that's not going to come in under their joint use agreement as a city program. That's going to come in as the next level, which would be a user group. Just because we're requesting it, it doesn't become a city program and have top priority. So we need to keep that in mind.
And the other problem is lights.
Yeah, but AYSO doesn't play many night games. Well, I mean, playoffs, but.
Yeah, and
doesn't-
AYSO is using the practice field currently this fall. Yeah, they went ahead and requested that and got that.
Al, you said there's a subcommittee in March of 2024 with Parks and Rec members?
May 2024, yes.
Who was on that?
Bob Moda and I believe it was Kelly Watson.
Were these options of changing the use of Stevenson and softball
No.
discussed at that level?
No,
The Parks and Rec Commission haven't heard these ideas of changing field uses?
correct. These have come up recently,
Okay, you mentioned in your presentation from discussions.
right?
Were there discussions up here on the dais where you had direction to?
No.
Okay.
Well,
So
we've
this-
discussed it a little bit because it comes up, Stevenson's use comes up every time we say the word park.
My
Right.
point is that this is probably not the body to dig in and roll up our sleeves and figure out what's what. And I'll recall when you guys had that big joint use with Parks and Rec and City, someone says, why don't we play AYSO? And Bob Moda said, it wasn't the kids, it was the sideline refs that were just destroying the grass out there from running back and forth and raising the flags, and we couldn't maintain it, so it wasn't safe for hardball. So there's a lot of information that we aren't privy to that goes into why things are the way they are. So these are big decisions, and one thing, and I'm
Go
going to
ahead.
recommend we kick it back to Parks and Rec and
Sure.
let them make a recommendation, talk to the user groups. They know better than we do, right?
Right.
No one knows more about Babe Ruth and Bob Moda. Kelly Watson knows everything there is to know about AYSO. We're very lucky to have talented people with a lot of experience in this.
Sure.
The one thing I would also add in there is, what about Washington Park? Why aren't we doing AYSO at Washington Park?
They
when
are
I drive
using-
by, there's volleyball out there, and there's a bunch of activities, and a lot of time that park is just vacant.
Yeah,
We didn't have
AYSO is
events.
using Washington this fall.
You just started?
Yes. Yes, but there has been historically some issues with the residents and the amount of people that are coming for AYSO, so I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility if we want to revisit that.
Well, I'm telling you, there's unauthorized use going on
Yes,
from
we know
private
that.
entities all the
Yes.
time.
Right.
You know, you can have just massive volleyball nets set up and tons of families out there.
Right.
So those issues already exist. It'd be nice if we had control as a city, and we're programming that to help alleviate some of the field pressures we have.
Sure, I agree.
But I would think that slide you just had that disappeared,
Oh.
those decisions should be made by Parks and Rec and get some kind of recommendation, because let them hash it out and tell us
Yeah, and
what
we can
makes
do
sense.
that. We can definitely do that.
I agree. I'm just, actually, the things I'm saying are just recommendations.
Sure,
I didn't
sure.
realize that they hadn't seen this yet. So this is actually good. We can get a little feedback on it, but I agree with them. It should go back to them. And can we get that back up? Because I wanted to talk about slide number 9. I think that's the last thing that. Okay, it had to do with the Youth Sports Council.
Yeah, the recommendations and the.
Yeah, because I think I brought this up last time, is that I don't know how that council started making so many decisions or recommendations on things.
It's not working.
Yeah, I was gonna have the same comment, because
Yeah.
it's basically
forward.
giving the youth council
There.
higher priority than the Rex and
Correct.
Parks Committee, which I think, the Rex and Parks Committee should be making many of these decisions. Like they're
Correct.
voting to, it seems like you're adding a layer of.
Well, and that's
activity.
what we're really wanting to hear. I'm really wanting to hear what the council's thoughts are on that, because I agree, it's a challenge
Mine
to
is
have so
that-
many.
Yeah, they're again, because I was on this thing, they're making recommendations about who should be in the group and who should get
They're
the
in the group.
fields, and that's a little bit of a conflict.
Correct.
I actually don't think there should be any decisions being made there.
Great.
They
Okay.
should be there to advocate for their leagues and everything, but the Park and Rec Commission should be driving the bus on all this, in my opinion.
Yeah,
So
the
change that to report to instead of recommend.
Report
So
to.
they can
or
report on,
something.
hey, here's how we report on this. Here's the facts of the matter. Let Rec and Park Commission make the recommendations.
And this did come up recently with the Chargers and the flag football, where some of the youth sports council, at the time we were calling it the youth sports council, wanted to vote on that. And I couldn't find anywhere in the language that said that that would be something that they would vote on. So, yeah.
So has the Parks and Recs Commission been privy to this ask either? So.
No, so these are two things that have just come up recently that we want, since I was bringing it to you, I wanted to hear your feedback or say, hey, do I go back to the commission?
Because, I did receive some notification from a couple Parks and Recs commissioners that they're feeling kind of sidelined, and that they're feeling very like that, and I was actually going to have a drafted email it's going to send to both of you about this today, that they're feeling that their time is wasted, and that they're just there as a rubber stamp, and they're not doing the functions that they're supposed to be doing. So when I see this kind of stuff come up here, and they have not been privy to this, and we're taking away their authority, it seems like there's something going on that I'm a little worried about, because the Parks and Recs Commission is supposed to be our eyes and ears in the public, and they have the expertise, and we've appointed them and appointed them to those positions. We did not appoint the youth
Sports,
and
or
the
youth sports
commi-
advisory,
commission.
right.
So it gives me pause that there's something going on here that we need to reevaluate, because the Parks and Recs Commission are people we have appointed on those commissions to be our eyes and ears, to give us recommendations, and I feel that we are undermining them.
If we're going to kick this back to them,
Yes.
Ostensibly with this saying that we'll change recommend to report, but then kick back the field allocation piece to them, can we give a little bit of guidance? Like, otherwise, I'm just trying to avoid skate park-itis where we have like
Right.
88 the meeting where we talk about Stevenson Field. Can we tell them like, look, we want Washington Park and Stevenson Field, and to satisfy me, the high school baseball field or whatever included in this, and tell them to go forth a little bit of guidance and then provide their recommendations, because I just
That would be
hate
wonderful.
I would just hate to continually have this drag on, because their meetings are less frequent than ours. So
Right. No, that would be helpful. And I think too, Councilmember Persick, I wanted to either request that you guys provide feedback or send us back, either way.
I would think the logical step would be go to those guys first, come up with some concrete ideas, explanations why things the way they are. We can change this, we can't change that. So we're kind of just given blind direction here based on limited knowledge and data. So yeah, I would agree. We should send this back to the folks that we've appointed to answer these questions and figure out what the right thing to do is, and then we can consider the recommendations and vote accordingly.
Perfect.
I got 3 questions.
Yes.
One is, who sets the field allocation policy? Is that Rex and Park or is that the Youth Sports Council?
Well, it was created years ago with both, with the Rec and Park Commission and the Youth Sports Council at that time. But every time it's been amended, we go to the commission. We typically bring it to the Youth Sports Advisory Committee just for kind of feedback, but the actual
Is it
vote
a bit
goes
of,
to
I
the...
guess, is it a bit of give and take? I've never, unlike Lance, I wasn't on that, but I have a lot of experience at AYSO. AYSO is growing. So
Yeah.
AYSO is growing, then they're having to get field space from some other member of the Youth Sports Advisory Council. How does that work when you're talking about fall and we're already constrained for space?
Yeah,
is it a
so-
voting thing? Can you walk me through that real quick?
As far as who allocates the field, staff
Yeah,
does
like
that.
how many field hours do you get at campus versus other places? Who makes that determination? Is that when you say field allocation policy, what does that mean in terms of who's getting what field time and days and
So
where?
it's basically there's a priority schedule, and then it's whoever is highest on that priority schedule. That's usually who gets first dibs, but we don't.
No, I get that part. So AYSO, because they have so many residents, would get first dibs in the fall.
Typically,
the
yes.
question would be, how do we determine how many field hours they get? Because
It's-
that was the problem this year.
It's whatever they request. It's whatever they
So they
request.
didn't request enough.
Well, they're growing, so they requested what they had before, and then they wanted additional space after there were other requests that had come in.
So in the event that there is not enough field space to go around.
Correct.
Per the field allocation policy, how then is it decided who gets what? Is that you, or is that Youth Sports Advisory Council or Rex and Park? Who makes that call?
We haven't had that situation yet.
But it happened this year where Friday nights were taken from AYSO, and we had to scramble to accommodate them through the school district.
Oh,
through our
right,
joint use
yes.
agreement.
So basically what the commission suggested was, if there's a discrepancy, you make the decision as a director. So I bring in all the staff, we talk about it, we weigh the pros and cons, and that's how the decision was made this year.
And has it been working, Councilmember Giroux, in your perspective, has it been working, this process, over the years?
It's tough to say. I think that there, as you mentioned, kind of as this league is growing, as
Yes.
AYSO is growing, there's just a need. But there's also a need for space because flag football is
Exactly.
growing and this
Exactly.
lacrosse is growing. So the
Yes.
problem is that we're busted out, and it's tough because I think this is a very popular AYSO district, right? Because
Correct.
people everybody wants to play in it. So we just only have X amount of space. So that's why I think we have to relook at, because these policies were made long
Years
before
ago.
any of these groups got to be this size. I think we have to redo it. But I think, Carol, I think everybody's saying the same thing. I think we've kind of gotten away from relying on Park and Rec Commission for this, and we've gone to subcommittees and things like
Yes.
that. Bottom line is that, I think they should be here saying, hey, this is what we think. Based on our expertise, based on what we know, they should be here. And I think they would do it in 2 seconds if they were asked to. But I think we have to get back to empowering that group more than what they are right now.
That would be great. So that would help, that helps with the voting authority in that, because then the Sports Advisory Committee understands it's the commission that's going
Trust
to be
me,
making the
if Park and
recommendation.
Rec came back and said, yeah, we don't need this committee for what we're doing, I'd be like, great, okay. They should be driving the bus on this. And it seems like they're riding kind of maybe shotgun right now, and it's not right.
And I would say that's probably accurate statement. That's the field allocation policy, the way it's written, it's, right, it seems that the Youth Sports Advisory Committee plays a role in this process, but that's not really clear. So I'd
And
really
that role
like
should be
to.
advisory.
The
That
role should
role, I
be
think
that.
what we're
Right.
saying is that role is advisory to Rec and Parks. Have Rec and Parks come back
Yeah.
with here's what we think you should do. We got rid of the Acacia Park pool, so there should be room there.
And we did this first revision, staff took this on whenever, back 6 months ago, and then I've really started to dig into it because we've had these issues come up over the summer. I really think that we need to take a much bigger look at this policy, but that would take, that would probably take 6 months for me to bring that back, to be able to do research. I talked to Daryl, going out and seeing what other cities are doing. How do you handle it, like percentage-wise, right? Like AYSO gets this percentage, and then flag football gets this. Because right now, we don't have that level of specification in there, and we're starting to need it. So really, I'd love the council's blessing to take this back and work on it at the staff level, bring it back to the commission, and bring it back to the council sometime early spring.
That was a segue. So I had 3 questions. I got to 1.
Yes.
So that's a perfect segue for the second one.
Yes.
Which is, it would be nice to avoid director discretion, because you're left upsetting some group, as you've experienced.
Correct.
firsthand. And if the field allocation policy was more thorough, comprehensive, maybe Rexham Parkway's
Exactly.
in, then maybe we can avoid some of those situations.
I agree.
The
That would be
second
great.
one was these field audits
Yes.
you mentioned.
Oh, do I need to
How
put
are
that?
those done? We keep talking about this technology. We thought with Rec 1 we had the ability to give transparency to who's using a field at any given time, so it was self-reporting. Are we closer with the new tech?
So the way that I talked to Daryl about this as well. So so we're in contract right now. The contract doesn't end for another, I think, year and couple months. So really what I need is I need an analyst on board that can come in and look at the current contract. How do we work with attorney? How do we get out of the contract? Create an RFP for a new contract, go out to bid. I mean, we need to do, that's a project that I think we need to do. We just haven't had anyone in that position for quite some time.
So how are the audits done now then? Is that staff
so
going out there
rovers,
periodically?
yeah, exactly. So rovers go out, they just take note, here's who's supposed to be on the field. Were they there? Were they not there? It's the very beginning of the season, so we haven't had any issues. And we're not doing this to get anyone in trouble, but we've heard from a lot of people that they drive by fields and there's nobody on them.
It's more about if someone is not using field space.
Giving it back.
Giving it back.
Correct.
Because you do plan for something, but then things change. So,
Right.
Okay, that's the
And
third
that's
one.
where the new software will help, Mayor, is that they have those things built into, they're much more sophisticated than what we have currently.
Could I recommend that software ties into our new enterprise software if possible? So anybody can go on and say, I'm staring at Rec Park, who should be on Rec Park? Oh, it's
Right.
the AA Giants and the whomever.
Now, Chris, if I may piggyback on that, so we've talked about this, like a public member being able to get on and go, who's on at Stevenson? Oh, it's the AYSO 5-year-olds. I did talk to the school district about how they handle this, so they don't share any of that information because you're now sharing information that's a 5-year-old
If you're
girl.
going through a bad separation and you've got a restraining order,
Yes.
you don't want to know that this kid is going to be at this field. I think that's good internally, but
Right, and we have it internally, but yeah, so that was,
I don't know if we should be sharing
Well,
that.
you can norm it to AYSO U10 is on the field. It doesn't have to have, the Assassin Crocodiles of my
Well, then
son's team.
What are you
could-
doing except empowering individuals who are going to be like, well...
Well,
I'm-
that way, when
I'm
I go to
this-
go on there and there's 35-year-old dudes playing a game of softball, I can be like,
You
hey,
can
man,
show them.
beat it.
Yeah.
That's when you get the
Hey,
16-year-old...
cowboy, go ride to the next rodeo.
So so we've been discussing this. I did discuss it with the district. They don't put any of that, and public has no access. However, I could work with the city attorney to see, at what level would we want to do that? Would we want to say just maybe AYSO, maybe not AYSO 10U?
Because you have to be careful, because
Yes.
if you have residents doing it, it's someone may be anti-AYSO and put out data that mean, you're opening the door for,
Right. So I think that's another thing we need to work out, and that we will continue to work out.
Well, I'd rather the coach who knows there's 35-year-olds contact someone at the city, and the city do that interaction, as opposed to trying to empower somebody to be like, get off the field.
Yeah, I hear you. That's hard. I mean,
It
we
is.
just experienced something where there's a problem at Brett Field.
Correct.
And they called and someone wasn't readily available, and they started panicking because there's they're fielding basically for baseball while they're trying to play soccer. So
We got that call.
I think I think there's something there if you can make it anonymous. I understand Councilor Baldino's point too, but what do you want from us? Because we've kind of deviated from all the
Well,
recommendations.
I think what I want is exactly what you gave me. I'm going to go
Okay.
back to the Rec and Park Commission. Really, I'm going to go back at a staff level first and delve into this myself with some of my management staff team, because we had this done at the staff level. They worked on this, worked with the subcommittee. But I think at a management level, I need to look into this, and I'm going to get an analyst on
So we
hopefully
don't really
soon.
need to make a motion to approve anything at this point. We gave you direction.
You
You're
gave
gonna
me
come
feedback.
back
That's
to
what
us,
I wanted. It was
and you're gonna
helpful.
work with Rexham Park before you come
Absolutely.
back to
So
us.
you may want to ask, like, a subcommittee of the Rex and Parks Commission to help you with that policy.
We have one.
I want
Correct.
to make sure that there's someone from that Rex and Parks Committee.
Yes.
Part of the process, so that they are, they're providing their expertise.
Right.
All right. Any other comments or concerns or questions from anyone up here?
Thank you, council.
Yeah, thank you.
That was helpful.
Okay, great. Glad you think so.
Now I
Just
got to
kidding.
go into part 2.
Update number 9. Update on joint use agreement between the City of El Segundo and the El Segundo Unified School District.
That is the WAP. Thank you, Jose. Oh, clicker should work. Okay. Mayor Boyles, Mayor Pro Tem Pimentel, and members of the City Council, it is hard to believe that it's been a year since the council approved an update to the city's joint use agreement with the El Segundo Unified School District. Staff is before you this evening to provide a brief update into the past year's progress with the amendments to the agreement. Slide, please. Oh, that's right, sorry. As a refresher, the joint use agreement was executed in September 2023. The current term of the agreement is 7 years with a reopener at 4 years. The joint use agreement memorializes agreements between the city and the El Segundo Unified School District in regards to field and facility use and maintenance, library services, and media services. In the past year, staff have seen an improvement in the communication and coordination between the district and the city. Staff meet regularly with district personnel and also communicate frequently via email. All field requests have been managed, and all user groups have been able to get the space they needed through the city and district's process. The district successfully implemented a software called Facilitron, which is assisting with their field and facility reservations handled by their staff. To continue improving external customer service with regards to field and facility rental, RPL staff are currently creating a dedicated web page for field and facility rentals and reservations that will basically be a one-stop shop. So we'll have a page on our website for field and facility rental and allocation. People will be able to see there when the applications are due, those 4 times per quarter, what that window is, when they're due, when those meetings are that we will have. They'll also be able to submit field allocation requests directly from that tab. They will be able to submit field return documents as well, so they can easily just get on and let us know that they don't need the field. It'll talk about field rest and renovation, when that's occurring, what's happening at the field. It'll also give out any important dates as far as, for example, recently we had the Chevron Soccer Academy, so someone could get online and go, oh, what was that over at Campus El Segundo this weekend, and they could see, oh, it was the Chevron Soccer Academy. It'll also address maintenance projects, so when we're having maintenance issues out at, for example, Campus El Segundo, the door was kicked in, it was out of service, we could put those types of things and the status of what's going on with those repairs and renovations. So really, this will be a much meatier place for the public to go and really see all of that information that I think kind of is disjointed right now, and we're sharing it reactively when we get questions or concerns. But this will really, I think, empower the community to get as much information as we have about what's going on at the fields. So we're looking forward to that. And then finally, I did just want to give an overview of the usage in the past year. From October 1st, 2023 to September 30th, 2024. So I apologize, it's a little bit small to read there, but you can look and see the different user groups and how many hours they reserved and utilized the spaces. And then down at the bottom, you see the private. So that would encompass private rentals, but also, for example, the Chargers Flag Football League is under private because they are not currently a member of the Youth Sports Advisory Committee. So this gives you an idea of the usage numbers, and we will be posting this on the webpage as well, so the public can access this.
So, am I reading that correctly? It says nothing on Washington. Didn't we just get through saying that we had programming on Washington?
We just started in the fall.
Okay.
Yeah.
So fall didn't start until 3 weeks
They just
ago.
moved them over there in the last few weeks. As we
Okay.
were working out the use with
Gotcha.
the school district, they were able to give us some field space.
Oh, okay,
So
awesome.
those numbers probably aren't in here yet.
Great, thank you.
Yes.
Are these hours or what's the?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Right, correct.
So, Al, you said that there, I know at the beginning there was an issue with, AOS didn't get their request in time.
Correct.
But you said the school did accommodate and you had-
Absolutely.
That's great, because that was honestly the entire
They were wonderful.
intent of what we went through, and that's awesome to see that. I
Yeah.
really appreciate that.
And they've
so-
also opened up the middle school, so we've got programming
That's
going on
great.
over at the middle school. So it's
That's
been a
terrific.
really nice relationship for the past
Great.
year. And the
That's
new
really good to hear.
superintendent,
Good,
very supportive, wants to support us, wants to work with us.
great to hear.
It's been really refreshing.
So Ally, on that previous page.
Yes.
On the coming up, when is that website going to be?
Active and ready?
Yes.
I told them it needs to be done by December 1. So
Okay.
staff are working on it now, but I actually told them I'd like them to come back to the council meeting and do a presentation and just kind of how Jose did for El Segundo Connect, walk the community just very briefly through, here's all the things that you can find on this, and
So is this going to be available through El Segundo Connect too? Is this going to be?
I'm sure we could put a link to it. Yeah. Absolutely. I think it'll be really, I've done some research on how other cities are doing this, and there's some really easy ways we can
And who's
inform the
going to
public.
maintain that information on that page?
It will be staff.
Do we have the staffing to do that? I mean, that's a lot. Maintaining a page is hard. 'cause
Yes,
it's
no,
constantly-
that we will make that happen. The information is already there, it's just in different locations, and it's a little bit hard to find, so this is just moving it over, and then it'll be updated every quarter, or when special
So where
projects
are
come
you
up.
keeping the data repository to get it on the website?
What do you mean?
Like, because this
What-
information, are you keeping it somewhere, then you have to translate it onto the website?
Yes.
Like if there's not a direct connect?
Right.
So is there any way for us to try to streamline that so whatever the repository is can feed into the website so it's not a dual effort?
Yeah, we can work on that. Yeah,
I mean, 'cause
absolutely.
data's only good if you update it. So,
Exactly.
if you're updating, if you have a repository system that doesn't feed to your website information, someone has to take that information and manually put it into the website.
Right.
Which is redundant and prone for mistakes and prone for a lag in timeline.
Right. Yeah, our current software that we have, I have to
I
be
know
really
it's
honest,
clunky.
is not great for this.
Drew and I know.
It's not great for this.
We fought it, but
But the new system will definitely tie in easily.
But the new system, are you thinking of using the same system that the district has purchased?
No, no, because we need something that handles all of our different
Gotcha. Okay.
program registration class. We're looking into a software called Kaizen, and it's being used in Manhattan. It's being used in a couple different cities. It is wonderful. It looks very similar to El Segundo Connect. It's very user friendly, and it does a lot of things that Civic Rec just isn't doing as well as we wanted them to, and as easily as we wanted them to.
So the contract we're in, we still have a year and a half left with that contract? we
Right.
think? Is there any way to get out of that contract or to at least start the process, fast forward the process so we could be live and ready in a year and a half to cut over? Or are you waiting a year and a half to start the process?
No, what I'm waiting for right now is an analyst to come on board and take this project on, so doing all of those
So
pieces.
a project manager, you want a project manager?
Correct. I need an analyst.
So, but have we put in the IT funding to do this?
Yes.
So it's been funded already?
Well, we already have funding currently, yes.
No, but I'm just saying, if we have a year and a half left on the contract with Rec One, right? Are we waiting to the year and a half to start the project?
No.
Or are we starting the project now, so the day we're done, or we can get out of that contract, we can flip over?
We're going to start the project as soon as I get an analyst on board. We're going to, because we may be able to get out of the contract earlier. Manhattan Beach had a way that they did it with legal, so I would obviously engage the city attorney's office.
So are we gonna just get a contractor in to do that? Like a project manager, a true project manager?
We won't need that, no. Our analysts will be able to do that.
No, but
Sorry,
no, an analyst, when you are doing an IT in like a project, you need specific skill sets. And you're not gonna find that in just a basic analyst. And that analyst, if you have someone, the long-term, your skill sets are gonna be different once you transition over. So generally, you hire a project manager to implement an IT project, and then you hire an analyst to manage it going forward.
Yeah, you can answer. You better speak on that than I will.
So that's correct. Some smaller projects, similar to El Segundo Connect, I was the project manager. So some projects, they kind of handhold you through the deployment process. And this is one of those where an analyst could be an appropriate resource to really kind of plug in some of the information gaps that are needed, and they build the app for you.
So my only challenge is that it takes us a long time to hire somebody, and usually like 3 to 4 months. So are we willing to wait for that, or could we not get a project manager who already has experience in IT, who could speed this process up so that we can, I mean, it seems to be something that is every community member is engaged with, has concerns about. So how do we streamline that process and not be beholden to waiting to get hired an analyst? Because that could be 3 to 4 months, then they got to get on board on their regular duties and then do this project. It just seems like a lot.
You can certainly talk with the rec park director to see what our options are.
Yeah, we are already pretty far along with this analyst position. I don't think it's going to take 3 or 4 months. I mean, we already have resumes.
Should we take bets?
But I think
No.
the first start, I think, will be creating the web page, making sure the information is there, and then we can start to really look at what do we want with this system. It's not, I hate to say it's not going to go fast, because we really need to really research what's out there and what we need.
That's why I think you need project manager, like more of an IT project
Okay,
manager. Because it sounds like this function is
Yeah,
really
all right.
more IT, not basic analyst.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to take.
Quick question.
Yes.
On the fields or the,
Yes.
I don't know, facilities. I don't see the middle school basketball. I know they added like 4 or 5 basketball courts. Are we going to have use of that
We
as
do
well?
have use of them,
Okay.
yes. So those
Just haven't
numbers,
started
when
yet.
we do our next report,
Awesome.
you'll see all of that, and I think
Great.
you'll be really pleased to
Thank
see.
you. Okay, anything else on this?
No.
Okay.
Thank you,
So you got
council.
what you need on that one,
I got
right?
what I need.
Okay. Wow, we're done with
Lance,
both
any
of those.
questions?
Okay.
Okay.
That was a receive and file. Great.
Yes.
Okay, thank you,
Thanks.
Ms.
Thanks,
Thank you very
council.
much, Ms. Mancini. Okay, item 10, Patches Program Quarterly Update. And I see the Chief Sal Rodriguez is coming up.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, and Council. So you're just going to get a quick opening act from me. The main person here providing the presentation will be Lieutenant Muir and Deputy Assistant City Manager Barbara Voss. I wanted to thank you guys for supporting this project. As you will see, it's been really working out effectively. I wanted to thank the city manager and his staff for supporting it, and all my fellow department heads. Without their support, this program wouldn't be where it's at today. And you'll find in the first 90 days some of the success we've had already, but I see this working in the right direction that we talked about when we came to you back in July. So without further ado, I would like to pass it on to Lieutenant Muir. As you know, he's very passionate about this project, and I'm really thankful we have him here today.
Thanks, Chief. Mayor Pro Tem, council members, thank you very much for getting this program started. So we are very excited to show you what the team's been able to accomplish over the last 3 months. We're also going to be getting into what we hope to accomplish in the 3 months coming up. So the team was established after members from each city department came together. We've held 3 meetings so far, and those 3 meetings were very productive. I think the most productive thing to come out of those meetings was the open communication. And in the slides to come, I'm going to highlight what some of that open communication was able to accomplish. We're still working with Harbor Interfaith. Harbor Interfaith is contracted through the South Bay cities of government to work on all the beach cities. But as you see in the picture, Neil and Valerie, they're in our city every day. And Monday through Friday, they're providing outreach, offering services, getting people the help they need. And they've been very successful. So they've had 70 interactions with individuals experiencing homelessness in our city, and they've been able to get 6 people into housing. Now, one of those individuals actually came back after 2 days in the housing. I think it's important to note, one of our officers contacted that individual after he came back to El Segundo, asked him, "Why'd you come back?" And he told us he gets food and money from our residents. I think that's something that we are going to address here in the slides to come as well.
Are those 70 different individuals or 70 interactions?
So 70 interactions, a lot of the individuals are repeat customers, but the 70 interactions, which is actually a lot for our small city. One success story I wanted to highlight. So our patrol officers went out to a domestic violence call. They contacted the victim, who it looked like was going to be out on the street after this incident. They connected her with Valerie from Harbor Interfaith, and Valerie was able to get her placed into housing, and that seems like it's working out well. So we had discussed at our initial presentation about tracking calls for service at the police department. I think we identified a pretty good way of tracking how many calls we're handling that deal directly with individuals experiencing homelessness. It's not a perfect system, but it's pretty good. We're what Deputy City Manager Barbara Voss is going to be talking about is an even better database, and that's going to actually help the police department in managing and tracking our data. For now, though, in July, we had 287 calls out of our 2,700 total calls. That accounts for about 10% of our call volume. So on average, 9 calls that the police department responds to has something to do with an individual experiencing homelessness. Either we're called to check on someone's welfare, or they're involved in some sort of incident. In August, 269 calls out of 3,026. That was a 9% call volume, and still an average about 9 calls per day. In September, 231 calls for service were related to homelessness out of the 2,899, and that was an 8%. 8% of our total call volume had something to do with homelessness, and 8 calls per day. I don't want this to give a false narrative. As you see, it was 10, now 9, now 8. Again, there's ebbs and flows, and this month we've handled a number of calls related to homelessness. We've handled a number of encampments too. So I think we're going to see, when we come to present in 3 months from now, you're going to continue to see ebbs and flows. I just don't want this to present. I think this program is seeing some success, but I don't want to provide a false narrative here either.
Just one quick thing. Lieutenant.
Yes.
I think we actually had our first interaction today through El Segundo Connect also.
Yes, we did.
So it's already being used.
And I'll actually highlight that at the end, but thank you for bringing that up. That's great. So I wanted to also say thank you for approving our host detail. That's a grant-funded homeless outreach services team detail where officers come in on an overtime detail just to provide outreach to individuals who need it. We've had 9 of these details so far since it got started and it was approved, and they've contacted over 40 individuals who need help. They've been able to connect the individuals who are willing to get help with Harbor Interfaith, and some of those were those individuals who got placement. We're also initiating the Patches Engagement Team. Now, that name might change. This is going to be an in-house police department team that's going to be a follow-up team for the host detail. So host goes out, they offer resources, they try and get people help, they identify encampments. But we need a follow-up team that actually goes back and checks in and makes sure that we're gaining compliance, we're getting people to get off the street, we're getting people help. They're going to do the follow-up enforcement when necessary. They're going to work on encampments, work on making sure those encampments are getting cleaned up. And that Patches team, our first meeting is going to be this Thursday. It's 5 officers, Sergeant Anthony Sanchez, who's part of the Patches team, and myself. One of the things that I'm most excited about is our partnerships. We've been able to get not just the partnerships between the city teams, but also the outside and surrounding agency partnerships. There was a beach encampment cleanup by LAPD and park rangers on August 22nd. I got a call from my counterpart at LAPD saying, hey, Luke, we're cleaning up the beaches. You might want to send some officers over here. They gave me the heads up. We sent officers over there. They not only helped with the cleanup, but they also ensured that as those encampments were cleaned, the individuals then just bring those encampments south. Now, as the beaches are clean, I'm sure you're well aware, encampments sprout back up. That's what the Patches follow-up team is going to be, continuous follow-up, and that's what's going to be needed in order to make this program completely successful. We partnered with LA Metro. There were a number of encampments on the train tracks in the area of Rosecrans and Aviation. And just north of the train tracks, there is a storage facility where there were a number of burglaries. And we determined that someone was cutting the hole in the fence, dividing the train tracks from the storage facility. We partnered with LA Metro and were able to clean up those encampments. Some of them came back. We then partnered with BNSF PD. BNSF PD came out, met with me on September 10th. We walked the tracks together. We identified some of the encampments that were permanent structures, like this metal box up here where individuals have broken into and probably been living in there for months, if not years. BNSF put out to bid and paid for the encampments to be cleaned up. 2 of the encampment were permanent structures that they paid for the removal, as you can see the before and after pictures. And these were structures where individuals were held up for probably months, like I said, if not years. And now they're completely cleaned up. Again, it's up to us to follow up and make sure that these encampments don't come back. Lastly, Honeywell and Mar Ventures, they own that vacant area between the Point and Plaza. They sent an email. They have an environmental crew that comes out and tests the soil. And some of the crew that were coming out were nervous because there were a couple encampments in there. We went out on Friday, gave the individuals in those encampments 72 hours notice, went back on Monday. And I want to give a massive shout out to Public Works. They came out with all the equipment. Streets Department did such an awesome job. You can see in the pictures with the loader, they ended up loading up 2 dump trucks filled with trash and debris and cleaned it up. And you can see the top right, it was completely cleaned out. And moving on to the city attorney's office, they've been an incredible partner. I've met with Joaquin Vasquez to get legal advisement. I had mentioned one of the important parts of Patches is those meetings where we get together and we have open communication. So I met with, at one of the meetings, Julie Todd from library spoke up and said, hey, we're having issues with individuals sleeping in the library, spreading their stuff around. We met with Mr. Vasquez, identified maybe an update to the rules of conduct, and that's getting presented to the library board, and they're going to consider that on November 12th. He also was instrumental in the anti-camping ordinance, going to be providing guidance and making sure that we are enforcing that, but enforcing that correctly. And so that guidance is instrumental in making sure that we're following state law. That municipal code comes into state law and will take effect this Thursday. Now I'm going to hand it over to Deputy City Manager Barbara Voss to talk about communications.
So before we do, can I just ask one question?
Sure.
How are we capturing all the costs associated with all this stuff? Because, you know, is there grant money available that we could be going after to cover? Because it's expensive and people need to understand that there is a cost associated. I mean, the Patches program is wonderful and I'm really excited that we're doing, but this constant outreach has a cost to it. And I just want to make sure we are educating our residents on what that cost is, as well as trying to go after some grant money to cover those costs.
This is expensive. It is potentially an expensive program. However, so our host detail, all the host outreach that officers are doing, and that is on overtime, is all paid for by a grant, and that's through LA County. We get $126,000. It's a 3-year grant. We get $126,000 for this year for overtime, and then $76,000 next year and the year after. So all of that outreach for us as a police department is already paid for. The meetings that we're conducting, all of that is on normal time, normal hours. There is some overtime costs, especially when we start doing the follow-up. But I think that's all. We can look into other grants. The host details paid for by a grant, but also Harbor Interfaith is paid for as well by South Bay COG.
I just think it would behoove us to have a way to capture this time so that we can articulate and communicate out to the public how much money we are spending on this program, so that there's an awareness.
Understood, and I'll make sure that we start tracking that in our analytics as well. Thank you. Barbara.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. Thank you, Lieutenant Muir and Chief. I'm dropping stuff. All right, so I wanted to talk about two topics this evening related to patches. One is communications and outreach. The second is data analytics and KPIs. So for communications, to touch briefly on that, we did launch the program formally with a press release. It was picked up by the Daily Breeze, Public CEO, and I think maybe one other publication. There was a lot of interest in what we're doing in El Segundo. There continues to be questions asked of the chief, other officers about our program as a model for other cities, which is exciting. We launched also a webpage. It's on elsegundopd.org, and then you go to community engagement, and you'll see patches right there. That's just a little snippet of the webpage, and we'll continue to do outreach related to the program. So data collection, analysis, and KPIs. So we have a lot of points of data that are kind of circling around a funnel, and we want to take all of that data and put it into one central location so that we can measure things like how much time is being spent. So the first point of data is what Director Calderon presented this morning, which is El Segundo Connect. So there is a service type related to homelessness in El Segundo Connect. You can upload photos, you can include your information about what you saw. If it's an encampment, you can include a picture of the, whatever you want to include there. And that will be directed to Lieutenant Muir and whomever he designates in the police department. Then from there, the police will dispatch an officer, and from there, the officer fills out what's called an FI form, field investigation form, this exact form, by hand. And then currently, or previously, that form was kind of being collected, put on a spreadsheet, photos were going in one place, and there really wasn't an organized, centralized methodology for collecting all of that information. So we created, you know what, I want to acknowledge Marizen Ramos. She is our Special Projects Administrator, very talented in this area, and helped us to create all of this, so acknowledgement to her for sure, for her help with this. So we have a form, the Patches Field Investigation Form. Currently, the police department's only using this FI form this online FI form for homelessness, but they could use it in the future for other types of contact. But the officers have on their phone a link to the form. They go in, they fill out essentially this form electronically, and it goes into a database that we've created. So there's a few different kinds of ways to make contact with homeless individuals in our community. Officer-initiated contact, calls for service, dispatch, they get a call, they go out. The host program that Lieutenant Muir mentioned, and then quarterly homeless count, which occurs in January. So from that, all of the information that's collected in those contacts is input into the electronic form, and it goes into a project management database. So we're using our database that we developed for the strategic plan to track action items and strategies and progress towards completion of the strategic plan. We've made another database within that software to track this program. Another exciting thing about this is that when the officer is in the field filling out his or her field investigation form, they can select refer to service provider. They can refer to Harbor Interfaith, they can refer to county mental health, and automatically an email is generated. So that referral happens. It's not go back to your desk, sit down, write the email. There's an auto-generated email with the content already pre-populated that leads to this form, the Patches Program Progress Report form, and that is for our partners, our community partners. That form doesn't allow them to get into the database. They don't have access to our project management software. They simply have that form that they can fill out and indicate what services were provided, what the outcomes were, what the status is, and that, again, goes right into our database. So the database has the ability to track all sorts of different analytics. Gender, any other types of demographics, the number of contacts by day, by week, by month, by year, whatever is needed. Any point in time, we can run a report. The number of contacts per individual. So once someone's in the database, then if in a given month, I think we have a picture of that. No, it's probably this one. Okay, so if you see that chart there, in a given month, if you have, you know, an individual and you contact that person 4 times, that will count as 4 counts and it'll show in the database. So it's not just, oh, this person was contacted this month. It's each and every interaction with that individual will be tracked and measured. And you'll see here, I don't have any real data in there. This is just test 1, test 2. But eventually, we'll have a lot of data in there. And so this data, number of contacts made per month, and we do charts and charts of any description really to illustrate the data. Type of contacts, was it a call for service? Was it through Connect? Was it a host outreach? So we were monitoring all of that. Where does that, I want to say lead, but it's not lead, but where does that contact come from? And then here's just another example of the types of charts that we can create, the data we're collecting, and how ultimately we will have an established set of KPIs, which you already roughly do, but we'll have an established set of KPIs. We'll track it on a quarterly basis. And when we have our next report, we'll have more data to share with you on this. So with that, I'd like to turn it back over to Lieutenant Muir to close up.
I just have one question. So one of the other things, when we encounter a homeless or an unhoused person, do we do any outreach to missing persons to notify, like, do we keep a database of pictures or image? Because I do know, like, a friend, they were looking for their sister for many years, and this person was homeless for many years, and if she had only known, she would have been there to help. And I know that, especially with mental health, there's a lot of, especially with dementia, that there's a lot of people that don't know that they're being looked for.
Yeah, if we do a typical wants and more type of check, that'll come up if somebody's missing. So we do that. We'll get their name, identification, date of birth, stuff of that nature, confirm who they are as best as we can, and then we'll definitely try to see if they are a missing person. So that's something we would do for sure, definitely.
Just kind of give you an idea of what happened today. We were called out to an individual to check on an individual. We went out there. He gave us a name, but the name was a little bit off. He was very confused. We have software that we're able to use now. We have a fingerprint checker that just by using the fingerprint, we can find out exactly who he is, date of birth and everything. So even when we don't get true and correct information, a lot of times we're now able to get that using the kind of the new items that we have, technologies out there that we're able to get the information. And this individual wasn't missing, but if he was, we would have been able to figure that out and get him back to where he was supposed to be. I just want to give you an idea of where we see the program going in the next 3 months. We're going to continue working with Harbor Interfaith, outreaching, getting people help. Education campaign for the public, I think that's important. Not just educating the public on El Segundo Connect, the website, social media campaigns, but also making sure this is a partnership, not just between the city departments, but with the residents, with businesses, with business owners. This is only going to work if everyone comes together and does their part. I want to make sure that we're putting out the right message to, and always through the lens of compassion, but that everyone is working together to get people long-term help and not doing anything that's going to end up being counterproductive. We want to identify the best practices, even for after hours. We've noticed that we've seen some of the shelters, their intake closes at noon. We want to find ways that we can work around that and get people help no matter what time of day or even if it's on the weekend. We're also enhancing our relationships with the surrounding homeless outreach program. So we met with Hawthorne PD and kind of got an idea of what their program is all about. We're meeting with Manhattan, Hermosa, Redondo, and Los Angeles, all the surrounding areas, to find out how we can enhance our program, improve our program, and not just that, work together in one coordinated effort so that no one is moving their problems into our city and vice versa. And I think with that, we're going to find even more success with a coordinated effort. With that, that ends our program update. Do you have any questions for us?
I'm curious what resources, if any, we get from the county for this program.
So right now we're working with Harbor Interfaith, LASA. Well, I guess I'll put it out there that LA County is the source of our host detail money. So LA County paid that, which I think was $1 million to be divided amongst the multiple cities. We're also going to be working with LASA. They're kind of the biggest outreach provider. We work with Harbor Interfaith, but LASA is also out there at our fingertips to help us when we need it. So there are resources. There are also other grants out there that we can be utilizing as well. We're just getting started. So I'm excited to get the program kind of up and running and see what else is out there. But that's a good question.
And keep in mind also, the Department of Mental Health is coming from LA County
Yes.
as well. I can tell you that the big difference that I've noticed in the short term that we've been doing this for 3 months, you see the buy-in from the people that are involved. Most importantly, Harbor Interfaith, who's doing all the placement of people. They come to our meetings, they're engaged, they're involved, they're in our community probably more than they were before, and they see the difference that we're making, so much so that they even said, you guys are the model that everybody should follow.
Oh, that's great.
There's a reason why they're saying that, because they go to other cities and they're seeing it being run differently. And in the short term, in 90 days, they're making a big difference and an impact in our community. And I think having seen that and getting that from people that have been doing this for a very long time, to say that means that we're headed in the right direction. Again, only 90 days in, and I think we're being very successful so far in what we're doing. And I'm really looking forward to where this is going. Open to any more questions, sorry.
That's great.
I got one. You hear me talk about the same 3 people over and over again. The woman at Starbucks, the man with the 2 shopping bags that hangs out at the library, and then the guy with the shopping cart that I think has roots in El Segundo, if I remember correctly. But specifically that guy with the shopping cart that, if I remember correctly, Lieutenant, when I was at that Patches meeting, I think you said that you had encountered, or not, the city in general had encountered that individual something like 360 times in a year or something like that. Or it was a huge...
It was a lot. It was a large
Maybe not
number.
every day. 120 times. It would be like every 3rd day on average. So we have someone like that. I know it's just one, but there's 3 that I see in town on a consistent basis. What recourse do we have with, conservancy rules now? Like, how do we get those? How do we force some of these people to get help so they're off the street? Because I thought some rules had changed that allows us more ability to act as a conservancy if we go through the care court or some other means to get these people that really need help. Like the individual with the shopping cart clearly has some mental illness challenges, substance abuse challenges, doesn't want to take the housing that's available in Gardena. So what options do we have available for people like that?
So I think in that specific issue, and again, follow-up is key. So reaching out and contacting family members, finding out mental health history, finding out background. Everyone has a story. Working directly with Department of Mental Health. Our Department of Mental Health consultant has come out, contacted him multiple times. Really, it's with individuals that are kind of repeatedly getting called upon, repeatedly generating calls. The follow-up is going to be key, building a paper trail, and eventually that's what it's going to take to get a conservatorship. But that takes time. In working with our Department of Mental Health worker, so I was very excited that that was going to be something that could happen immediately. She said, hold on, let's be realistic. These things take time, sometimes months, sometimes more. This individual has been in El Segundo for over a year now. He has ties to El Segundo, but also he's reluctant to get help, and we want to make sure that we're doing everything through the lens of compassion to get this individual help. And that's probably going to come through a conservatorship, but that's going to take a pretty large paper trail. That's going to take the Department of Mental Health working with us. I'm optimistic, but it is going to take more time.
With care courts, you need a mental health diagnosis, I think, to proceed with that. Is that right, or do we have that totally wrong, or is that from what its genesis was? You need an actual diagnosis by a mental health professional, I think, to put them in the care court system. Is that That's one of the wrinkles, right? Someone exhibiting the symptoms of a mental disturbance.
Yeah, conservatorship is very difficult unless they've committed some kind of crime or they're doing something that's really threatening the community. I've seen it that it's very complicated. And as I think you were at the meeting, Mayor, when Harbor Interfaith talked about that, getting the conservatorship going, it's very complicated. And if an individual is just being contacted for, trash or whatever it may be, which is most of the contacts with this individual, very difficult. But we're not, doesn't mean that we're not going to stop making those contacts and doing what we can to do the outreach to eventually get there, unless you're putting them on a 5150 hold constantly, and that doesn't seem to be the case with this individual. We're challenged. It's a challenging effort to try to get that to happen.
So when we went through COVID, one of the things that came out very clearly was that our communication with the LA County Health Department was non-existent, and not just for us, but with the other South Bay communities. And it came clear that, they're broken up into regions, and they said that they had communications with our city manager at the time, and when all the city managers, and we were on a Zoom call, and I don't know if you remember this, Drew, someone asked a question, what city manager has been communicated with the LA County Health Department, and no one raised their hand. So I'm post-COVID, and I know that they do have a lot of resources at the LA County Health Department. If I'm not mistaken, the region that we're in, the person had 300 employees at their disposal. So I'm asking the question, I know with the Menlo County Health, you're working with one specific person, but as a city, have we developed a good relationship with the LA County Health Department, and do we have a good direct contact there, and are we able to somehow work with them to expand the service? Do you know who our contact person is at the LA County Health Department? Like what our region is, and do you remember that conversation? It was pretty.
I think Chiefly Ronson Chu leads the sort of our regional spa aid conduit to LASA Resources. I'll wait till my council reports too. my editorial comment on that, but I think that one thing that is unique is that our situation with people is somewhat different. So some of our larger neighbors are dealing with higher levels of criminality and setting up specific courts and housing things. Ours are far more discrete issues of I think behavior and litter.
Nuisance, right?
Yeah, it's a little bit of that. And I think one of the tricks, and I think you may allude to this, is making sure that people who, if you run a coffee shop and you have someone who's loitering in your coffee shop all day, if that person can trust that they're going to have a non-uniformed staff person come in and contact that individual who's not necessarily doing anything wrong except living in your coffee shop. I think historically that's not a comfort level our businesses or our librarians have had, right? They don't want the police coming into their coffee shop to rout some guy out. They would like someone to encounter that person who's clearly having a either economic hardship or mental health episode or drug addiction issue, whatever the case may be. But that's a really tricky art of this.
It's very tricky because it makes it challenging for us when our officers get calls to go to a restaurant or a coffee shop and they're actually eating the merchandise, the food and the drinks that have been bought, the food. Officers are in a hard place. Unless the merchant is willing or the proprietor is willing to say, hey, they're creating a disturbance or they're creating an issue with my business, can we do anything? So that's why what Luke mentioned was requires education to, if you feed them short term, that's only a short term solution. We're looking for the long term solution to get them placed. There's some individuals that have readily and are willing to take help. There's some who just don't want help, want to remain out on the street. So much so that where Lieutenant Muir mentioned, there's an individual who said, I get about $100 a day out here in the streets. So they're happy out in the street because they don't want to be controlled in an environment. They'd rather be out in the street. So that's the challenge that we deal with, and our officers deal with this every day.
So our residents, by feeding or giving these people money, is actually hurting the progress of helping these people.
Unfortunately, yes.
So, and how we educate people that is.
Correct.
Yeah.
I think it was great, Coffee with a Cop. That I don't know if you were there, Chief. I can't remember. You were there, Lieutenant. It was awesome for you to talk to Heather at Starbucks, because having run Starbucks locations in Santa Monica back in the 90s, Main and Hill and other locations, you don't want to have to deal with it.
No.
And you don't even know how to handle it. You got syringes and just excrement in the bathroom. I mean, terrible situations. So we don't have that yet. And I think that it's imperative that we continue to work with the business community so they feel comfortable. Because I can tell you, a typical store manager does not feel comfortable having that conversation. And it's much easier just to kind of ignore it, let somebody sit in the corner. But that could be affecting other people that come and go all day long in that establishment. And so I think that's important. The other thing I'll say is, having sat on COG for years at board level, there's so little money that comes to the South Bay Council of Governments relative to what the county gets. I mean, I don't know what the number is, but it's like 90% goes to the county. And the reason there's a Blue Ribbon Commission to look at homelessness and housing is because it's so broken that people got together and said, this is absurd. We need to look at that. And our rep is Paige Calderado, how do you pronounce her last name? Redondo Beach, Calderodovic. Anyway, she's our rep on that. And it's important that we pay attention to that and we make an argument to get more direct funds at the city level rather than having to beg through COG to get the funds, because that's the current process. We have to make a case through the COG to get funds for our project. And that, we're not getting enough. Anyway, that was a little bit of a soapbox, but thank you so much. Any other comments or questions from anyone else? Yeah, you guys did a great job. I'm just sorry if I seem frustrated at the end here, but you guys are doing an amazing job.
To answer your question from earlier, I don't know if we did, but if people are concerned about a homeless person out in the field, call 911. Don't hesitate. Don't try to call a non-emergency number. We'll always encourage our community to call 911. Don't be afraid of that. It'll eventually get routed the right direction. And if they can use El Segundo Connect, if it's a non-emergency item, please go ahead and do so. What IT created is amazing. The first connection came to me, actually. I got it, and I replied right away to the citizen, letting them know. I thought it was still a test. I found out it was a real thing, and we're actually dealing with this situation at a bus stop right now, today and tomorrow. So it does work, and we're really looking forward to the direction we're going on this.
And huge to get 6 people housed in 90 days. That's incredible. Great work. Great work. All right, that was a receive and file, right?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Great
you.
work.
Thank you.
Okay. Committees, commissions, and boards, nothing there. City clerk, anything to report this evening?
Yeah, just a quick, to let everybody know that Cambria Hotel will be your voting center that will be open from, it's an 11-day voting center, opens on August 26th. The 2 that will be 4-day voting centers are the library and the Da Vinci School. And those will open on November 2nd. And leading up to the election, the times that they're open are from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. And then election day, they will be open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m.
And that's our El Segundo High School, El Segundo Public Library.
Correct.
Because the Da Vinci's and the Cambria's across town.
They are.
So are
but-
we providing any type of buses or transportation?
Not
No.
that I know of.
I mean, it's across town, so I just want to make sure we're providing services to seniors to get to the voting box. We've never done that. I mean, okay, I know we have maybe we put an outreach that they can use that Metro
I am
Lift.
sure if they call the Jocelyn Center, same as they do if they ask for a ride to the doctor's office, if they were to call the Jocelyn Center and ask for a ride with our Swoop and Uber and Lyft, that they would definitely give them a ride to a voting center.
And the ballot box is
And the ballot box
open
is
right here in
open,
Holly and
and
Main.
they are, seen them pick up several times now.
Great. Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Alrighty, yep.
City Treasurer is not here. Councilmember Baldino.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I'm on my El Segundo Connect app, and it tells me that on the 19th at 1:30 is Pumpkin Palooza at the Aquatic Center. And then when I click on the 26th, it tells me the Halloween Frolic is happening in town. So 2 great community events. Hope to see everyone there and have a safe Halloween.
Wow, thanks for sharing that. That's awesome to hear. Councilmember Drew.
Nothing for me this evening.
Thank you, sir. Councilmember Perstock.
I just want to welcome Capitritos Sandwich Shop. Capriati, sorry. There you go. Capriati's. And then Cambian, a new company that opened up here as well. It's nice to see new businesses moving to town. And that's all I have.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Perstock. Mayor Pro Tem Pimentel.
I wish I could be as mercifully brief. So we had an in-depth call. I'll try and be concise. We talk a lot about electrical demand, and some particularly in light of this conversation about data centers and how electrical demand goes from transmission to distribution here in town. And part of it is, we have companies that are looking to move here that cannot get sufficient power, and working through sort of the traditional mechanism where company that has a large power footprint applies 18 months before they move in and asks for distribution to come to them. Conversely, we have, in sort of the modern economy, companies that need power and are shopping for land and want to know how quickly they can get power there. It was a very instructive call with Edison. We learned a lot more than we solved, I think. But, I do think it's always fascinating to know that as a city, we use 30 megawatts of power every day without Chevron, and most of our neighboring cities, probably combined use about 8, which is just a remarkable piece of sort of South Bay trivia, that we have such a larger enterprise footprint. South Bay Aerospace Alliance meets on Thursday. That will be our first big board meeting of the year, and that will be the first time that we address SpaceX and Space Force differently. Or excuse me, Space Force and the Air Force differently on it. And that is something that I know sort of existed in the background to us, but was instrumental when Mayor Fuentes was here in helping to make sure we anchor the airbase there. It will be my second time attending, so I will try not to say anything too stupid. We had the Homelessness Task Force meeting, and that's what I was alluding to in the Patches program. I think I think that we as a city may struggle with a bit there is, one, the very small fractional amount of money that we receive as a region to deal with this. We have much larger neighbors who have much larger issues that will absorb most of it. But so much of the discussion now is all based on planning around Measure A, and should Measure A pass, I think we will all be somewhat dismayed that every piece of planning they have requires adding more staff. And that becomes a little bit of a problem then, that do we create a solution for a problem, and part of the solution wants to never solve the problem? And that's probably the wrong way to phrase it. But if your job is to fix a problem, it's the problem will always exist. So I think that is the Measure A. Measure A has a lot of moral hazard baked into it. It struck me in these meetings. It will be, if it does pass, significantly more funds at play. I think the challenge of that, they are looking for ways to make sure that the funds are used efficiently and are of value. I'm somewhat, having sat through 3 consecutive meetings on it, somewhat squeamish to those prospects. In town tomorrow, L'Oreal hosts International Day of the Girl, which is a UN-affiliated program. The New York program was last week. They are doing that out of the goodness of their heart. So there'll be young girls flying in from around the world to present to a bunch of female executives about how their programs are benefiting sort of female agency in countries where historically girls have not had access to economic success. So thank you, L'Oreal, for that. That is a significant big deal. LAX train report. We think the People Mover is likely to start pulling people in the trains in 2026. That train goes about 7 blocks, I think, all told. But they'll be impressive. Take about 280 people per train as it goes back and forth, not switching tracks, going one direction. Just going to cost you about $600 million to go about 5-6 blocks. So file that away. Very popular program, though, with some of the groups who spoke on it. They're very excited about it. That should get fixed about the time homelessness does. And sanitation canceled this week because of League of Cities stuff. It was doubled, but we did have the big meeting today on the recycled water program. LA City was not represented in the recycled water program, but the LA County sister program was. And this is reassuring, because despite the fact it's a $6 billion program, the people who did all the presenting on it were from Orange County, because Orange County did this a number of years ago and was able to show, here's how sanitation, here's how much the bill sanitation foots, here's how much the water district will foot, here's how it fits together, here's what some of the challenges are on placing these things in. So the idea that there's an active template on this program, instead of people sort of cutting it from whole cloth, lends me to believe that it may actually be implemented something close to on time. And then lastly, we had the transportation. Oh, one more thing on the K line, which is what the green line will become when we become purple. We are slated to sometime on or about November 30th, being able to take that train from Redondo and go all the way up north instead of going to Norwalk, which will be a significant pressure off of the 405 for a lot of commuters conceivably. So that is, I think the 30th will probably be a little bit squishy. You'll probably see it go to the end of the year, but that'll be a notable change for the way that train runs. And then lastly, the ITC in Inglewood, that's the $700 million ask. We will have a working group meeting on that on Monday. I think the vast majority of cities represented in there did not, or were not comfortable with all of the history of how the Inglewood project progresses. When we go to the COG meeting, the COG board meeting after that, which will be the Thursday, we'll be asked to vote as a COG, and they will ask all the members to be there to decide if they're going to endorse taking Measure M sub-regional funds and committing that to Inglewood. So the Measure M sub-regional funds, that is a piece of tax increment based on Metro projects that through, was it 2057, Mayor? In 2057, have about $3 billion in it. That, to me, seems about wildly optimistic. That includes about $600 million worth of grants, so rounded down to about $2.5 billion worth of programmable money. And of that $2.5 billion available to the region, they would ask for about $700 million of that to go to Inglewood for the train. Inglewood doesn't think they'll spend it all, and then the $300 million they don't spend will eventually come back to us. There's a very complicated system where Metro would front the money, then we'd be paying Metro back with interest, and then in theory, Inglewood would pay us back with interest based on something called a climate resiliency district, which aren't strictly legal yet, and it hasn't been formed, but sometime around, just wait, there's more. And then we would be pledging in the future money allocated from the decennial transfer of Measure R and Measure M funding, another really fun series of riddles. The point being, it's a ton of money. It's a ton of money, and we effectively be providing matching funds for money we already provided. So we're being double dipped. It's, again, the train as a region we've decided is a good idea. When it was $1.2 billion, now it's about $2.3 billion, and that will be a contentious issue. So I don't want to belabor this with a series of measure this and measure that sort of funding deal. The point being, we'll have and all are welcome at this sort of roundtable educational thing on Monday, because that following Thursday, that vote will be, skin and hair flying all over the room. I mean, it's a lot of money, and a lot of people are very vested in it. Both supervisory districts, 2 and 4, are heavily represented. The city of LA has a district, Councilmember McCosker, his district is represented in it. They all have very strong feelings about it because it is a big, big project. And that is all.
And most importantly, are you attending that meeting, that Thursday, the board meeting? I'm sure it's some child's birthday. Let me look, because I'm not. All right, really quickly here. Congrats to Slice and Pint with the new Redondo Beach location. Really stoked for them on PCH. Good to see them growing. Carol and I were at the Hot Wheels Mattel event. That was amazing. How many people? They bring in thousands of people for that event? 1,700?
She told me they were expecting, I think there was 1,700 people.
Yeah, amazing. Great event. Really cool. We met the guy, Larry Wood, who was the original guy behind Hot Wheels. I toured PCH. Thank you to Elias and Daryl for accompanying Julie Stolnak and I on that tour, and I think we got some outcomes out of that. It's amazing when you slow down and look around how much stuff needs attention, and that one building in particular that I know Mayor Pro Tem has been talking a lot about really needs some love. And so I'm looking forward to seeing some improvements there. Congrats to Capriati's for the ribbon cutting. Those sandwiches are great. That Wagyu prime rib beef is amazing. And then I'm surprised you didn't mention this one, Chris, but we had a great event. I want to thank Barbara Voss, Christina Ravelis, the entire El Segundo TV team, Diane Shaban. Am I missing anyone? Mayor Pro Tem. It was an incredible event. We got great exposure for the city of El Segundo in Santa Monica. The only thing wrong with it was that we were in Santa Monica, which I reminded everyone when I made the opening remarks. But thank you. Good job to everybody. That was a great exposure. Mayor Pro Tem, great job with the panel on the El Segundo companies. Doug Bernauer, Radiant, Mark Roden of Skyrise, both had incredible things to say about our city. It probably couldn't have gone any better. So thank you for that. All right. City Attorney and then City Manager.
Nothing this evening, thank you.
I have a very short Hyperion update, if you don't mind. The still no selection of the plant manager. I just spoke, actually right before the meeting, with Ryan Jackson. He said, Daryl, it's just not there yet. As I shared last night, down to 5. I think it's down to a handful of people. very close, but still no deal signed with the new site manager. We are in final stages of the amendment to Dr. Stenstrom's contract to bring on the individual that'll act really as boots on the ground. We've worked out a pretty significant scope of work that I think the council will be pleased with, where he'll be spending significant time there on the site with the blessing of Barbara Romero. So that's good news. We should have that completed in the next week or so. The next AQMD board meeting hearing will be November 19th. We have drafted a letter, as we have typically done before those meetings, that'll go out this week, outlining some additional requests that we make to continue the abatement order. And the main piece of the letter will be to continue the order until such time that the odor complaints cease to exist. Over the past 2 weeks, speaking of AQMD, they received about 56 odor complaints. Inspectors responded to all those complaints, but no violations were observed. And then also, Hyperion did schedule some work at the bioengineering maintenance facility that was set to go, to happen on 10/9. That was delayed due to some unforeseen circumstances, and that work has not been rescheduled. And then finally, Hyperion continues to perform work on the secondary treatment reactor, which is expected to be completed by the week of November 4th. And just a side note, the secondary treatment reactor, what it does is it blows air into the tanks to provide oxygen for bugs, who in turn survive by eating the waste. It's pretty interesting. So that's what these secondary treatment reactors do, and they will be doing work on those until November 4th. And that is it for Hyperion.
I just have one question.
Yes.
Do we have any thoughts on if AQMD is going to extend that abatement order?
We will know better on the 19th, so no, at this point, they've given no indication.
Actually, no, I
Wait a
was
minute.
listening to that whole last hearing. They were indicating that they were keen to extend it, I'm pretty sure.
So
if I remember
beyond
correctly.
2025, is that what you were talking
Oh,
about?
no, well, beyond.
Beyond the January
Oh, no, sorry, no. I thought you were talking about beyond, no, January 2025 is what they talked about.
Because
sorry.
January 2025,
That's
this
what-
stuff is not going to be completed.
Correct, that's what we're asking for in
And
the
we need
letter.
it to be extended until it's all completed.
Absolutely, that's in the letter, and we will be reinforcing that verbally at the meeting.
Mr. Mayor, I had one save round. I think it might be worth asking Chevron to report a bit, the AQMD piece, proud of my memory that they've got a $300 million greenhouse gas reduction project going right now that I think is worth them talking about. I mean, it's a pretty positive story. No pressure on them, but if they'd like to share that, I think that's something that anytime there's a flaring event or a smell event over there, that I think that the people have questions, and it's always worth getting an update. I saw that ginormous crane, and I was sitting there at the Campus El Segundo soccer event, and I was like, hey, what's the ginormous crane about? And then I got an hour and a half's worth of jet fuel emission abatement discussion, and it's fascinating. It's absolutely fascinating. So I think it's worth, when they have a positive story to tell on that, it's worth educating people about what they're doing down there.
Yeah, great.
No, that's actually, most of the work right now is on the jet fuel emission line.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you. We are adjourned. Thank you.